might actually talk for a few seconds. Hey everybody, happy Indigenous Peoples Day. Thank you to those that were waiting quite long. I think we're going to go ahead and share this video first, and then we can go into the conversations and whatnot and meeting everybody. So yeah, again, thanks to those that were waiting. We're going to go ahead and start this video. Little did we know that after the start of colonization in 1492 and the independence movements later on, that the native people of the Americas would continue to go through centuries of suffering through Latin American dictatorships and the forceful assimilation of native children through residential schooling, along with a foreign introduction to a system to separate natives based on non-native blood. It's more than evident that we were being erased. Hope is bleak, but hope is not lost. With many of us reconnecting to our native roots, what are we going to do with it? There'll be people out there that will say you're not native, that your voice won't matter, but your voice does matter. This is just as much our land as it is anyone else's land on this continent. How are we going to move forward from here? Can we make a difference? Of course you can, but it's up to you. You control your destiny. Now, where are we going to go from here? Well, I'll tell you, we're going to keep spreading the word that we are native to these lands. People are noticing, and we are going to make a difference. Not just for us, for the betterment of the earth. Our time is here.
Columbus has to die. You know, it's because of Columbus that we are primitive. Well, let me tell you, I am a born-again primitive, and I am proud. And I am a born-again primitive. His legacy, that we are not human beings. You know, it wasn't until 1898, less than a century ago, the Pope declared us to be human beings. 1898. Imagine. The only color of the human race, the red Indians of the Western Hemisphere, were the only color of the human race not allowed to participate in the international community. That's why Columbus has to die. No one talks about majority rule in the 5 countries where we are majority. Bolivia, Peru, Ecuador, Panama, Colombia, Canada, ostensibly in Canada, because 90% of the non-Indians live within 100 miles of the U.S. border. And guess who lives in the north? And we control it. Canada found that out last year. The Oka crisis that you were kept from. When the Canadian Armed Forces employed more soldiers to surround 50 men, women, and children, Indians, than they sent to Saudi Arabia in the Gulf War. That's how serious the indigenous threat to industrial America is, and the Orwellian reality that you are now a part of. It's unacceptable that the legacy of Columbus keeps my people from sitting at the table of the international family of nations, when all the rest of the sacred colors of the human race are there.
I just heard something very interesting on the what are those Indians down, the Incas and those other ones that could write?
Aztecs and
the Mayans.
the Mayans. Yeah,
I was reading, somebody on TV was talking about how when the Spanish came, these priests burned for 30 days all the Mayan books. So there was none left. And his reason was, it's either the word of God, and we've already got that, so we'll destroy it. And if it isn't, it's the work of the devil. So they destroyed the whole Mayan culture, literature, which was very good and very aware. And there was about 3 books left, which sort of say, you know, got up and went to work. And there's not enough words for them to work out what the language was.
That's right.
And
One man destroyed a whole written
maybe they've realized how many there are on the whole American continent, including the South.
How many
people
votes
think there's only a few Indians left. There's millions of them in the whole continent of America, which includes South America. And one day they're going to be asking for their rights.
Although it's also very, very common in Latin America, where the Spanish elites who control a good many of the Latin American countries use mixed bloods against the Indian masses. And they try to convince the mixed bloods that they're actually white or near white, and that they're better than those who are darker. So they still use the caste system, you see, so that they can maintain themselves in power. And once in a while, they share a little bit with some person who rises from that group. In the United States, the most beautiful example of that technique is the coining of the term Hispanic these days. Hispanic means Spaniard. And that term has been coined by the federal government to co-opt Mexican Americans and Puerto Ricans into believing that they are more related to a white type cultural heritage, because there's no question about what Hispanic is Spaniard. And even within the federal government's definitions, white Spaniards are allowed to qualify for affirmative action and for other kinds of things under this term, Hispanic. Okay, in Spanish ex-colonies in Latin America, for example, the Spaniards have been gone since the 1820s. So here we are, almost the year 2000, almost 180 years later, and yet almost identical, oppressive, hierarchical systems continue to exist, ruled substantially by the same people that were running them when the Spaniards were here, right? Now, how is that maintained? It's maintained because of disinformation, because the people who are being oppressed don't know what we're talking about. They're manipulable. They can be manipulated because they don't know the history of their own oppression. And so that's, to take it into other areas, that would be one of the big reasons why we have to understand this.
In 1992, this country plans to celebrate Columbus's so-called discovery of the New World. How do you see this planned celebration?
Well, I think one has to compare it immediately with the visit of Marco Polo to China, which, as you know, preceded Columbus's voyage by a few decades. And no one claims that Marco Polo discovered China. They don't celebrate Marco Polo Day in China or Europe or Hong Kong or any place else that I know of. And of course, one of the reasons for that is because the Chinese, you know, are still in possession of their own country, and the Europeans didn't get a good foothold there. If they had, they'd probably be celebrating Marco Polo Day. So what that tells us, I think, is that Columbus Day is part of the ritual of colonialism. It's part of the ritual of imperialism.
2.5 grand later, and then... Hey, what's going on?
It's mine, Daddy. Noah keeps taking away from me.
Noah, give it back.
No.
Noah, give it back.
No.
I said give it back now. Noah! Larry, what the hell are you...
Larry!
Barry, you can't just. Oh, Lappy. Oh, are you all right? How did. Barry! Righto. What's going on here? Oh, sir, I'm arrested. Oh, arrest. Oh.
Hey everybody, happy Indigenous Peoples Day. I hope you guys all like that. Credit to Juan to making that old IP partner. So yeah, I hope I heard some people laughing, so glad you guys enjoyed. Hey, it was a demonic cat. If you remember, you go back and look. I had a demonic. Juan put everything together. I did as best as I could to think of the labels for it. So yeah. So yeah, everyone, thank you for waiting. I know we took a little bit more time than what was needed. You know, I was having some technical issues on my end, so I'm glad I got that fixed, and I'm happy to see everyone here today. So again, thank you, Steve, Miles, Sylvia, Sintley, and Juan, and your girlfriend. Thank you all for coming today. So yeah, again, welcome. And I think I really just want to hone in on the importance, you know, of this day. Obviously, you know, the U.S. government recognizes this day as Columbus Day, correct? And we all know about Columbus and whatnot. You know, I read my book here, Columbus and the Four Voyages, which I recommend people to maybe check out sometime. You really learn a lot about his logs and, you know, his treatment to the indigenous people, the Taino and the Arawak people that were in the Caribbean islands before. So I learned a lot from this book. I'll put this in the description. I would recommend it. It was, you know, sad to read some parts, you know, just the treatment of natives, you know, being enslaved and sent to Europe and, you know, all these other terrible things. So please, you know, if you have time and you haven't looked up like the atrocities of what Columbus has done, then please do. I think it will give a better understanding to people who are maybe a little bit not so familiar with this concept of Indigenous Peoples Day on Columbus Day, a better, more concrete understanding. So that being said, again, everyone that's came on, thank you so much. So, you know, we have some new guests on today and some guests that we've had on before. So maybe we could go in and talk about that. So, Miles, if you wanted to say hi first. If you weren't, sorry. I know you're busy.
Yeah, no, so I'm just trying to monitor the chat too, so I was like a little.
I appreciate that.
A little off, so.
Yeah, no, you're good.
Now, what was the prompt again, man? I'm so sorry.
Oh, we were just wondering if you could say hi and who your name was.
Really quick. Yeah, you know, hey, it's Miles. Y'all know me, Masjid Knight from the Discord as well. So, yeah, I'm reconnecting. I mostly came through it through my military service, and that's how I came. That's how I came to the reconnecting journey. Hooked up with the Karankawas and Coyote Clan in Galveston, and now I find myself in Yanaguana or San Antonio, and just trying to build as many farms and gardens as I can.
Yeah, thank you. And you've served as a mod here, no, not just obviously on Discord, but here on YouTube as well. So yeah, thanks for your work. Then Sylvia, you've been on before. If you just wanted to say hi really quick, and again, like, you know, where you're of Mexican descent, right? I want to make sure.
Yes, hi, I'm Sylvia, and I am, my ancestors were Olmec and Toltec, and I come from a Calpuli, and my Calpuli is Cocoyotla. I don't think I mentioned that in the earlier video. So I am not a reconnecting native. Actually, my town, we don't call it like tribe. Even within our people, we don't call it a tribe, but I don't know what I would call it. So we still do the ancient traditions of passing the power, picking our leaders, and there's 10 Calpulis in our city. So we still have those indigenous culture, and most people that live there have now last names. And I migrated to the US when I was a little kid. I grew up in the South, And I think that sums up a little bit about me.
Thank you. Then certainly you're new to the panel here. So
Yes.
yeah, maybe
Hi,
just a
everyone.
introduction.
Hi. So from my mom's side, I'm displaced. We're detribalized. We're Chicano. And from that side, from a high school, formerly known as Xochitlan, and is now known as San Juan Evangelista after it was evangelicalized. And the surviving culture and practicing culture there is the Coca culture. And we're by the Cajitilan Riviera. So we're what's known as the Pueblo Originario. And usually they call those pueblos de tradiciones, and those tradiciones are of the original people that are there. Sometimes are from people that were displaced. So our pueblo has always been there. So that's where I'm from in Jalisco. So there's a lot of misconceptions that there's no longer small towns like that or pueblos like that in Jalisco, and there is. And the Coca tribe is a tribe that's still recognized in Jalisco. So I always like to recognize that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And then Juan, nice to see you again.
Nice seeing you too, man. I guess you can say I'm a reconnecting Colombian. I'm reconnecting to the Muisca Chipcha, and I'm still learning lots of things. Here's my girlfriend, Leia.
Hi, everybody. My name is Leah. I am Navajo and Jemez Pueblo from New Mexico.
Nice to meet you, Leah. Thanks for
Nice
coming on.
meeting everybody.
Yeah, it's good to see everybody. Like I said, did anyone have any questions on the videos at all? I hope you guys liked it for the most part. What we put together. I know we had like Jack Forbes and Russell Means. Both passed away now, sadly. But I think those two people were the main two Native activists that Juan and I, looked up to, that really wanted us to push forward to create this channel for everyone, right?
Right.
Because Juan and I, we came together through Facebook. And we thought of these all these ideas and whatnot, and like what we could do, but like who would we look up to, right? Because we were just like two, 20, well, 30 now, but like 20-year-olds at the time, and certainly there was like older figures out there that kind of would say or maybe agree with what we thought. And we found Russell Means and Jack Forbes, and they Jack Forbes was a professor, I think, at the University of California, Irvine. Correct me if I'm wrong. And he very much promoted like that natives from the North and the South were not so different, right? And he talked about the term mestizo, or as you say, Latino or Hispanic. And, it was something that really resonated with me, especially, and Juan too. And then with Russell Means as well. I think he's more of a popular figure in the U.S. than Dr. Forbes is, but still a respectable person nonetheless. Then obviously we had John Lennon in there just because I know he's not Native, but I thought that his 2 cents, would have been good too. So yeah.
The only thing I would wanted to add for those videos is that he said that they burned the Mayan Amoxtlis. It wasn't only the Mayan that had Amoxtli. The Mixtecs had my people as well in Cholula. And there were a lot of Mesoamericans had Amoxtli. It wasn't just the Mayan civilization that had them. So that was one thing that kind of stood out for me.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I thought it was funny. Didn't he? I think he pronounced it like Mayans or something at first.
Yeah.
John Lennon did. But yeah, the Spanish burnt so many books and so much important material, during the 1500s. That's not really talked about too much. And in my opinion, I think like at least in the classroom, it might be taught that the people of Central America or Mayan people. I don't want to say they don't teach them as these unintelligent beings, but beings that did not progress a lot in literature, in science, and many of these other categories. They don't talk about how the Spaniards destroyed all these the inventions and whatnot, books and everything of that nature. So thank you for talking about that, Sylvia.
Yeah, it's kind of like a narrative that it's just the Aztec and the Mayan, but there's a lot of civilizations in Mesoamerica. It wasn't just the Aztec and the Mayan. Those are the most recent, and I think that's why people just talk about them, because those are the most recent civilizations that were in Mesoamerica. But they're more. they're not. They're not just those two civilizations. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you. And I think, I have this book. It was about like Spanish logs throughout the Americas, right? And they discuss like the first meetings with the natives of the Caribbean and how they were not as advanced as, natives that they met in Mexico and whatnot, right? And I think when they first, they met the Mayans somehow, and they just described them as people, that had, clothing and they were, had these, what was it? Not books, but some sort of, what was it? I'm trying to remember right now, but some sort of tool that they had that they found was more advanced than what they possessed. I'm trying to remember what it was. If I can find the book, I can give you more details about that. But they just described the Mayan people as very advanced, right? So that shows you that sort of like information is not really discussed, in schools, much less just common history, right? Because I think that, natives that are discussed in like the Americas, they're taught as like being, savage, right? Or needing to be civilized, that they lost to the Spanish because they simply were not strong enough. They were not advanced enough. So that is why they lost. But that's, far from the case, obviously. And I've said this multiple times that if it wasn't for the Tlaxcalan people during the wars of the Spaniards and the Mexica people, the Spaniards would have lost, right? It doesn't matter like how many guns you have, how many weapons you have. It's actually quite irrelevant in the end, because we're not talking about like machine guns or whatnot, right? We're talking about guns that could barely fire, much less like aim properly. But that's beside the point. Just the guns themselves. There's like millions of natives there, right? And if you do the math, there weren't that many Spaniards there. So even if they do all have guns, like what was it? I think 600 Spaniards times or against like what, a few million native people. It's just, again, weapons don't matter that much.
Well, I think, in my opinion, it's more because we were divided. We all the tribes and civilizations in Mexico, even in the U.S., if you look at it deeply, everybody were divided. Everybody had their own language because of time lapse. Everybody had a different culture, a different language, and that divided us. When the Spanish arrived, they saw this as an advantage to them. So they took advantage of this situation of not being divided. And I feel that this is what is happening today. We are still being divided. As indigenous people, we are still divided. Like there's a tribe here in 30 minutes away from here, and I've always wanted to go and visit, and I feel that going over there, I'm gonna like get you don't belong here. Why are you here? Like, and and that kind of happened to me when I went to the Cherokee reservation. It was the same thing. And I feel like as indigenous people of the Americas, we need to unite. The only divides us is time. Time separated us, our culture, our language, distance, but we are all one people and we need to unite, because if we don't, we are still going to be in that same position when the Spanish arrived 500 years ago. I don't know. That's my opinion. Sorry. I talk too much.
No, I thought you were fine.
No, not at all. That's what we're here for.
Were you guys going to say anything, or I'll add my 2 cents? I think, what I wanted to say is like, obviously sorry that you had to deal with that, that you were kind of unwelcomed. And I know it's different, with Northern, Native communities and whatnot as well. But I think that when we have people that promote this, like, say like ideology, but like showing that northern natives and southern natives are not so different from one another, right? And we don't come into this your world to promote some sort of like separation or any sort of like underlining violence and whatnot. We're here to like help support like one another. We're not here to speak over you or anything of that nature. So I hope that those that maybe are watching, or those that are of from northern natives, can understand that, we come from a place of like, how do I say, friendliness, open-mindedness, and wanting to learn from one another.
Yes.
Not try to be offensive or anything of that nature. We're going to say something. Sorry. But I think, Stephen, maybe we could go back to you really quick.
Yeah, man.
At what age, or should I say, like, what point of your life did you really become interested in this? Because I know you said you met some a native community or tribe, right? So.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, like, growing up in Texas, it's that same old story, like, and that's another thing. It's just like all these borders and all these lines where, like, where our people have gone north and south so many times over the 30,000 years now that we can prove that we've been here. Even more in that, and that even that date gets pushed back further and further. So like being mixed, like, my great grandmother, she was La Curandera, and she did all the things, and people would come and they pay her for services, and like she did all these wonderful things. But like, as a young man, when I was like 14, 15, 16 years old, I wasn't thinking of like talking to my great grandmother beyond like maybe the holidays and stuff, actually really learning about all that stuff, right? Because like the pressure here in Texas, especially during the 90s, was like, okay, you're all going to be the perfect Anglo kids. Nobody's going to be able to point to you and say you're not American enough, right? And so, just got pushed like further into that assimilation. And that's really where I was for a while until, I came back from my last deployment in Afghanistan, and I met another Native Marine, and I made a lot of natives in the military as well, like, from both sides of the border.
Yeah.
So, and then, of course, like a lot of other people, we started getting into genealogy, following Juan Cholo especially. And then, I've done some ancestry, tests and stuff. And it's just like, I've learned so much the last 3 years on this reconnection journey, about how like really far we go back here. And that's been a powerful thing. I'm not going to lie, to know, like, this is where our people have been.
Yeah,
there's no doubt, like most of the science and the archaeological, I mean, it shows it out, and they just keep pushing that number back further and further. And then y'all know me, anybody that was in the Discord in the audience, all this stuff, y'all know like how big into like plants and stuff I am. And when you get into the way that maize was grown, and how it had to go back and forth before it became this huge global industrial crop that it is now, that powers the world's economy. We did that collectively as a people on 2 continents.
Thanks for sharing that. I didn't know that about your great grandmother or grandmother.
Yeah. On my maternal side.
That's really cool. I didn't know that. But yeah, it's really great that you are really interested in plants and foods and whatnot, because obviously I remember too the things that you post in like the Discord too about that. And I learned a lot, especially about like harvesting and just native plants and in general, and just trying to be a better caretaker of the earth, Right.
Because in my opinion, that's one of the things that separates the cultures and the civilizations, right? Like European or those old world centered civilizations are all about like extraction. They're not about like keeping that balance and that relationship with the land. As we can see how they messed up, these landscapes we took 10,000 years to curate, and they've messed them up in like less than 200 years,
Yeah.
But hey, that's another conversation.
No, sure. No, that's, actually one part of the video that I was going to add in there, and I was going to say, I don't know, I hope I didn't sound too cringe when I was talking in my video, was just the destruction of like the native homeland, and right. And what I'm talking about especially is like the Amazon rainforest. You know, as much as we love, you know, the Amazon rainforest, and we do what we can to show our support, its destruction is almost, I don't want to say this, it sometimes seems inevitable. The continuation of its destruction. What do I mean by that? Is by that, you know, the country Brazil, right? No hate to them, but like it's like 200 million people, and that population is going to continue to grow, right? And that's going to be more resources that are going to need to be absorbed and consumed. And unfortunately, the Amazon rainforest is right there. Now, I do have my criticism towards, you know, a lot of people in the Brazilian government, right? Like, what's the guy's name right now? He kind of looks like a monster from another dimension.
Bolsonaro?
Yeah,
Yeah.
him, right? He doesn't care. So what are even the chances of having, I think there's an election coming up, right? So he could easily win again. That's more destruction that will continue. And to be honest with you, I think that even if there is like another person that doesn't have the same political positions as Bolsonaro, the rainforest is still going to suffer, right? I don't like to, like, you know, sound negative about it, but it's just my opinion. So I think something urgent needs to be done about that, or else, you know, the rainforest will continue to be erased. And that's just one of the several issues with the environment here in the Americas and the depletion of natural resources. Again, forest, I could go on and on. So now, Sylvia, thanks. Sorry.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I
had
gonna...
a comment on deforestation. Like
Yeah.
I told you, my Calpuli, is, the name is Cocoyotla, is where the coyotes live, or where the coyotes, their home. So we divide, there was 5 Calpulis, and then they divided from the other. So they become, there were 10 now. But what most of my people there make are bricks by hand, and they still make them. And when you go to that town, to my town, Cholula, you can tell the deforestation issue and problem they're having now. But this is because of the way we're thinking as natives. Even this is hard on me too, personally. It's hard for me to think, because I was raised in the US, and it's really hard to think of nature because of the way I was raised, the way we still, all of us still think that way because of those 500 years. So in my Kalpuli, you go over there and there is no trees. It looks like Afghanistan, because all the trees were cut down to make those bricks. And they don't really pay. My father did that too. My mom did bricks by hand, and it doesn't pay as much. But see, we as natives, that we have our Kalpuli, we still do our tradition, but we've lost contact with nature, and we need to go back to that. We need to, because it's just devastating our communities. But yeah, that's what's happening in my town. I'm sorry, were you gonna ask me a question?
Oh, well, actually, I wanted to add on to that. It was just like, I was in Cancun a couple of years ago, and I saw that they want to add a train to go from, I think, Mexico City to Cancun, or somewhere between that area and somewhere near Mexico City. And it's going to be a lot of like the destruction of the trees there and whatnot, right?
Yeah, the Mayan train.
Yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah, the Mayan train. And they found a lot of archaeological sites now with that, and they kind of moved the route around it, because that's the thing. The reason they're building that is for tourism, and it's going to affect everybody in the Yucatan Peninsula. All the indigenous people are going to be removed from their lands because of tourism in the Yucatan Peninsula, and that's a big issue over there. And it's not like they're discovering. I'm like, I hate when people say that. Oh, we just discover a pyramid. No, the local people knew about it. It's just that U.S. white people don't know about it. It's been there. Local people know about it. It's the Discovery Channel say, "Oh, the new discovery of a new pyramid." No, the local people know about it. It's just that you don't know.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Juan, I think you wanted to add a point too.
Yeah. I don't know how to kind of lead on to this. I'm gonna improvise, but I think it starts with the government. I know that the president from Colombia, Petro, he's really emphasizing to take care of the resources. I think every country in Latin America now they're trying to unite. I know Venezuela, Colombia, even parts of Ecuador, they're trying to take care of their resources because they know that there's the U.S. wanting to take their resources and do the coups and exploit. So I believe that as long as there's people who are fighting for the biodiversity of those countries and native rights, and I know that Brazil also has what's it? There's a representative in Brazil that's actually Xingu, and yeah, an Amazonian, and she's actually a first representative in Brazil. So I still think we still have a chance to defend the resources and their way of life. But as long as we know what is it that we have, then we'll be good. But it's gotta, what would you say? It's gotta be like strong policies to not allow them to get like pushed by the U.S. I don't know what I just said, but I kind of.
No, I got you. No, I understood it. Thank you for your point. Yeah, I agree. I mean, we have to have politicians that genuinely care, right? That like want to like help out. As much as I disagree with like a lot of like politicians in this country, sometimes I'm kind of like suspicious of the true intentions of what they want and how they want to provide, especially for Native people, right? And indigenous communities and treaties and whatnot.
The thing that would be really nice is the fact that each politician go to very civilized little towns and cities that are populated by indigenous people and kind of get insights into those places and what needs to be done. Because I mean, don't get me wrong, white people aren't all bad, but it would be better to get insights from indigenous backgrounds because we've lived like this our entire lives for more than, like you said, tens of hundreds of years. I mean, this is what we relied on for so long. So I think it would be nice to kind of have those types of politicians actually conversate with indigenous people, regardless of their personal thoughts, to kind of just be like, you know what? These guys are the ones who really do know what we should be need doing, because they've survived so long without us before.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's definitely devastating to hear, deforestation and hearing Sylvia's little talk about her place, and it's really sad. I mean, we're here in Florida, and
there's a lot of deforestation going on here, and there's a lot of people from New York, everywhere just coming in. We just got lucky just to find something that was renting, but yeah, I think that as long as the governments are aware of the communities and how they can contribute, then I think that will stop the deforestation, because everybody wants to come into Navajo land. Everybody wants to come to places where they know they have the upper hand because they can take advantage. So we can't let ourselves get taken advantage.
Just wish it was a little different.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Leah, and Juan too. Russell Means made like kind of a good point about like what can we do better for I think just the world, our the environment, and for ourselves, right? And he said to just follow back to our ancestors' ways, right, in managing the environment and how the world should be taken care of here in the Americas. And if once we do that, we're not only providing ourselves like a better life, but we're making the world a better place for everybody, right? And right now you have like over industrialization, the overconsumption of resources, right? So something has to change, or else we're going to run into a bigger problem later in life. Maybe not for us, maybe for our kids or our kids' kids, you know? So, yeah, thank you guys for that. Now, Sidley, I think you wanted to add something too, so I'll let you go.
Yeah, that I also think that we need rights. Like sometimes I think we need to demand rights as a unit, because in Mexico, what happens is that some nations and tribes get ignored, and others, you know, if they protest enough and they send enough letters, then, or if it's convenient because of their location, then they'll be helped out. Like that was the case where in our pueblo, there was a lot of foreigners coming and wanting to dig up the mountains and start settling around there, around our pueblo. Those lands are not set up for working. Whether they looked untouched, that's how we want them to stay. And they're for people that, you know, will be returning home, and they can have lands to plant on and do stuff. You know, our community does welcome us back. But there needs to be something to go back to. A lot of us leave not because we want to. Our parents left because they had to leave, because you know, a lot of things happening right now. What's displacing us is that a lot of the fishermen there, we had a huge contamination because of German companies that were coming in and throwing sewage there in our lake in Cajititlan, and that poisoned all the fish. It killed off a lot of species of fish, and now there's only farming, and the government subsidized those farmers. Now they're killing an indigenous way of life right there. You know, just only a generation ago, my father still grew up hunting in those mountains with his grandfather, and now some of those mountains are gone because when they get there, they start digging. They don't ask permission. They ignore the people there. They even use cartels against the people there. So we're not afraid of that kind of propaganda. We understand the proximity to everything, what we go through over there. In Jalisco, it is like that. And so what we had to do, the people of the town called, you know, they called the president, they sent letters, everything, and they actually sent the National Guard to protect the forest permanently. And this summer, the people of the Pueblo all planted over 200 trees that were donated. And so we need more donations for more trees. We need to listen to displaced voices, because we do come from somewhere. We know where we come from. We just need to share the experiences that are happening back home, sharing our own experiences. There's never one person that can monopolize that voice, because each community is different. Each community is going through different issues. And it's my belief that we are triangulated, because some are helped out, some are not. Some are left behind, some are posted forward, you know, because of tourism reasons, because they're at the right place where they want to exploit their culture. Like in our towns, we call it the Riviera de Cajititlan, and those are all artisan, original pueblos with artisans there. And so maybe that's why they decided to protect us, right? That's not fair for other towns that, you know, maybe they don't have as much tourism. Maybe they're just making do. Maybe they don't have enough people that can send the letters. Maybe they have been, but they've been getting ignored because there's a conflict of interest. A lot of politicians are paid off. So it really hurts me when people say, well, you know, we should stay at home and fix home. Well, yes, that's what we're doing. But then you find out that our land defenders are being murdered. Lots of people from my pueblo were murdered during that time that we were being deforested. It's happening everywhere. You know, the students that were murdered, the 43 students that were murdered, because they were also seeking a better future for our people. So it's not that we don't want better, it's that we are still being displaced. It's ongoing, the colonization. And I would like to hear more of those stories of what's really happening back home from a wide range of voices, from pueblos that are recognized, from some that are not recognized, from people that are completely displaced and are searching for their culture. I do believe that before sometimes we go to explore other cultures, we should really seek and find our own. And then we can talk about more commonalities because we are very similar. You know, the serpent's snake, you know, that whole cosmovision is found in Mesoamerica. But then we find some similarities in other cultures that are far away, such as the Cherokee. I've heard that the East Band also has a serpent, you know, tail too. See, there's a lot of different stories that actually do connect us somehow. And I think through knowledge share, but having your own knowledge first about your people, that kind of helps. And then the ones that already know their culture can invite others in. That too, we do need more resources for people that are reconnecting to learn protocol, to know how to approach the tribes of the land that they're from, so we can be better to each other, right? It's a lot. We're all interacting. We're all affecting each other. So it's really important that we unite and we have more conversations. No matter what station you are at as an Indigenous person, there are wealthy Indigenous people. There are some that are well off. Some are getting more help from the government. Others are not. So there should be more discussion about how to even take care of ourselves amongst each other as a people. I think that sometimes we fixate on how different we are in individual sovereignty, but also we should be looking to get together and unite. The way a lot of people have put aside their differences and their nations and their ethno groups to unite, and they do it here on our land. So I don't understand why we can't. I would like us to.
Thank you for that.
And if anyone wants to ask me anything about the things that are going on back home or anything else, just from my experience, I always feel more comfortable speaking as a Chicano, a displaced person, but I also will always advocate for my people back home.
Yeah, thank you again. Did anyone have anything they wanted to add to that?
I know that the Amazonian cosmology, they also believe of a serpent canoe. I don't know too much about it because I'm not really connected to that side. I know more about the Andean culture, but that's pretty interesting that you guys also have a serpent or snake.
Well, I do have a little bit to add on that. It's a Quetzalcoatl, and it's the duality. I don't know if a lot of people know about what it is, but Quetzalcoatl is the duality. Quetzal, the bird, and Coatl, the snake. So it's not just a snake. It's a philosophy of duality, and there was there was actually they would give this name to people of knowledge. It wasn't just like a god or a belief of, because there wasn't even a word in the indigenous as God. So it was more of the way that person behaved, and it has a lot to do with Toltecayo. It's the spirituality of the indigenous people of Mesoamerica. So I know a lot, but I don't want to go into detail because it's so long.
No, but that's great because the language is in the culture. So, you know, it's correct to say Quetzalcoatl because even Coatl, that's the twins. You know, the word Cuates, it comes from that.
Yeah, but it's
reality, and it has to do with our stories of origin as well. So it's always good to honor and say those names in their original language. So thank you for that.
It's the duality of always having good and evil. You can't have death without life, and you can't have life without death. It's more of a spirituality, of way of thinking, of giving that to a human, because it was a Tolteca that had his name was Quetzalcoatl. So there's two different stories to it. But I just don't want people to say, oh, the serpent, because I tell my kid, oh, because with Christianity, we see serpents as being evil, as being bad. And it's just, it's kind of mind blowing to me that no, it doesn't have to do with a serpent. It's more of a symbolic of being earth, the sky, earth, duality. It's very complex issue or topic. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, the cosmology goes very deep. I know there's a lot of people that are against other people learning the cosmology of the Mexica, but I do feel that, you know, as a lot of people are diasporic Nahuatl people, the Nahuatls were taken all over Mexico, and a lot of our people that are indigenous, they're practicing cosmologies from philosophies from halfway across the world. So it's like, why can't we study our own philosophies, our own cosmovisions respectfully, not in an exploitative way or a way that you're trying to gain something, just in a way that's respectful to the ancestors. And learning a cosmology that's there for us to learn. For 8 days, those books burned. So, you know, don't be gatekept from learning that culture. That is your culture, that those are your roots, you know, because we are the people. Who else is going to carry on the culture? If you that want to comment, it doesn't make sense. We need to really be assertive about our journey and about how we reconnect. We have our right. We are in our right to do that. That's what I want to say to people that are still finding out.
Sorry about that. It's on mute. Yeah, thanks guys, you know, for talking all about that. Went through the comments section here. I wanted to bring something out that I thought I saw. Yeah, I kind of just want to elaborate a little bit on this point, just being someone from Peru as well. Yeah, there are like Peruvians aren't just, you know, Andean. There are a lot of Peruvians from the coast and the Amazons as well. I was born in Lima, which is technically off the coast of Peru, right? So I kind of just like to believe, like, even though I was, you know, adopted, that maybe my ancestors came or always lived off the coast. So there's a diverse array of natives in Peru, of where they come from. So yeah, I think we, you know, Miles, you know, kind of talked about his story. So Sylvia, I was kind of curious, if you don't mind me asking you,
Sure.
like, at what point did you really start to connect with, like, you know, and I know you said you didn't reconnect, right? Because you came from somewhere, right?
Yes.
But was there a special point in your life where you took like a very strong interest in who you were?
Well, traditionally, we like who I was. I was that typical Mexican that, because of I don't have accent and people would just look at me, I would say that I was from California. I never said, oh, I'm indigenous from Cholula, that it's the oldest town in Mesoamerica. I've never had that. I always was ashamed of where I was from as a kid because of the racism that I went through as a child. I always practiced my indigenous culture through my childhood, even in the US. So it's not like I didn't know, but we just didn't speak of it. It was kind of like being ashamed of it. But when I did my first time that I felt it was when I was in college. I had I think it was a mythology class. Yeah, I think it was a mythology class, and there was an extra credit, and the professor told us, if you guys go to this powwow. I had no idea what a powwow was, and you get extra credit. So when I went over there, everybody, they were with the drums. In my Calpuli, we don't do that. Like, we don't, because it's so Europeanized and everybody wants to be white. Everybody wants to not even speak the language. So when I went over there, it was my first time that I heard the drums. It was the first time I heard them. And my heart just sank. It was an experience like, I've heard this drum before. Like this, just being here, standing, looking at them, it just, I felt like I've heard this before, and I just didn't know what to do. I was like in shock. And when it was over, they invited everybody to go and dance, and it just felt like I was there before. And it was so sad because at the end, one of the guys told me, "Oh, I'm from Mexico." I'm like, "What? You're from Mexico? Like, where are you from Mexico?" Oh, and then he started telling me where he was from, and I'm like, "Yeah, I'm from Mexico too. I'm from Cholula." And he didn't know where Cholula was, but he was more of a city from Mexico. And I'm like, someone that is not traditionally raised, is practicing indigenous culture, and I'm like, I'm not mixed. I come from an ancient city. I shied away from it. So that since then, it really impacted my life completely. So, and when my child was born, that's when I started doing like the spirituality of it. But that was like, oh wow, 2005. I think 2005 when I first heard the drums. Yes. But that's my story. I'm sorry, I'm a crybaby.
You don't have to apologize. Thanks
No.
for sharing that. That was a really powerful story.
That's very
Can I say
human.
something?
That's what separates us, you know?
Is someone going to say
Can I
something?
say something?
Yeah, please.
So that's actually really good that you said that, because I feel the same way whenever I go to them. And where I'm from, in Farmington, New Mexico, which is the northern part of the Navajo Nation, we always have this. Like, I want to say we have about maybe 20 to 30 every single year from where I'm from. And I get that same experience every single time. I know exactly what you mean by, you feel it. It's definitely completely different from the people that I know who dance in powwow. They've told me that the reason why it's so soothing and relaxing is because it's matching part of our hearts. Whenever we listen to something like a cat purring, like the one that's walking in front of me right now, is on your chest, it just feels so soothing and healing. And I would honestly, my personal experience is I would suggest you go to a powwow at least once a year, because that's when.
Oh, we go often. Like I said before, we go to the Cherokee Reservation. I just don't get close to the whole thing because I don't want to feel like different.
That's the beauty of it.
Yeah, that's definitely the beauty of it. You're being able to feel vibrations inside of your whole being, and just the point of relaxation. I mean, even if you're not native, you're not indigenous from Northern America, I would highly suggest this. I mean, because it's definitely just a spiritual healing from my personal, because I mean, Navajos include themselves a lot in powwows, so I would, even with listening to it on Spotify when I'm driving sometimes, because sometimes I'm having to drive most of the day and I'm just like, you know what, I really just need to make my life a little more stress-free and just relax myself a little bit. I mean, I guess it kind of helps with, when they do the meditation bowls and the soothing sounds. I mean, it kind of works the same way. But that's great that you experienced that, and I just wanted to say it's amazing, and I think that you should definitely enjoy those moments when you're close enough to see a powwow, to take that chance and at least spend however long, at least one song through. I mean,
at the Cherokee Reservation every year they do like, well, I think they stopped doing it because of COVID, but every year they do like the International Native Festival, where a lot of natives from Alaska, Peru, Mexico, and the U.S. they get together and do their ceremonies. and it's beautiful. It's just beautiful.
They also have an annual one at Albuquerque, New Mexico, called the Gathering of Nations. I'm not sure if any of you guys have ever heard of that.
I think maybe
Yeah, that happens in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and the last time I went was maybe about 3-4 years ago. I want to say maybe a little more, but they're inside of a coliseum, and that coliseum 75% of the time is completely filled with dancers, and that's just dancers alone across any indigenous background. I mean, there's some who dance from Russia, there's some who dance from Germany that I've met. I mean, it's great. But yeah, that's all I wanted to say.
Oh, and one thing for the dancers, like I've kind of that I've seen Mexicans doing danzas, like they get a lot of backlash from other indigenous people because they kind of evolve from what it used to be. Like when they use the panachos, usually they didn't use those back then. And I'm like, people, let him be. Culture evolves. It's not gonna be the same for hundreds of years. As long as we have the root and the essence of it, is let them be, because culture evolves. Culture evolves. That's my only comment on danzantes. And
I agree with that. I totally agree that
absolutely right.
it's become more like a performance, more like performance-like than maybe traditional, or what you would see from traditional dancers. But I think that that's fine. Like I totally agree with you, because we have to remember, like, everything was not able to be passed down intact. So a lot of it's what people and natives were able to put together. And even here in the north, powwows are a pan-indigenous advent, because that's what had to happen so that culture could continue and survive. So I think that we need to be more open-minded. I understand that we want to be traditionalists and preserve and not appropriate cultures. But when you make something completely new, different, and it's other communities doing it, and they are who they say they are indigenous people from that land, then I do not understand why the shame and blame on particularly Mexican cultures, Central American cultures, Mexicans. I do see that they get a lot of more of that backlash that you're talking about. So I would agree with that.
really
I would
bad.
totally agree with that.
Yeah.
you were going to say something, Stephen or Miles. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I mean, definitely, like, yeah, I'm definitely down, like what others on this panel had said, but also, like, I mean, scholars and people that, are in the profession said that. I mean, from our, Copper side, most recently, Curly and Ruben, and especially, like, on their podcast that they have, the, oh, dang it, Tales from Atlantis, yeah. That podcast that they have, and they talk about that too, and a lot of it's just like not every single tradition needs to be able to trace back to some ancient culture, whether it's Mexica or Maya or Olmec and all this, to have like meaningful impacts in our lives today as natives and indigenous people. Like the sisters are saying, culture has evolved, and like that's one of the beauty of it, like powwow and danza coming together. It's like what are the more beautiful things to come from that, because like sometimes it could be hard, in the native spirit especially, to focus on like the new, the evolving, right? Because we're always just trying to save what we have. But I mean, there's no, at the end of the day, there's really no going back all the way, right? Like, we've lost too much, but we have a lot to build from at the same time.
I agree. Yeah, that's an interesting point they made from Curly. Shout out to Curly, by the way. I always love his videos. I forgot what the name of the podcast is again.
Tales from Atlantis.
Yeah. He has a really like good voice to listen to too.
Yeah,
Tales from Atlantis.
Yeah, and right. They tackle so much. I learned so much. You know what I mean? And like, don't get me wrong. I mean, Western educated scholars and blah 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 isn't the end all be all. But I mean, like, we're all also trying to operate in this system. So I mean, I think it's awesome that Curly and Ruben, went as far as they did in their university careers, and that they're teachers and educators as well. I mean, there is value in that, right? Just because somebody gets a degree, I mean, like all of a sudden they have nothing to contribute or whatever. Because the white man.
You say white man science.
Curly, he's really mindful of the community matters. So Curly is the type of guy that really cares about what's going on, and he applies his degree to help his people, and that's what's so great. He's not just trying to make a name for himself, and center himself. He like really listens to everyone. I've had very good experiences with him, and he's very about backing people up, and even speaking on issues that are controversial, or even that you might even get canceled over. He doesn't shy away from difficult topics, and I consider him a culture defender, because he's written very good articles debunking the Olmec theory, the debunked Olmec theory. So yeah, he's great. I would highly recommend his podcast.
Yeah, definitely. Again, like, shout out to that podcast. Thank you, Sidley. So moving on to Juan really quick, my friend. We've known each other for quite some time now. You kind of, you started in the very beginning with the other people as well. So my question for you is, Juan, is like, at what point did you like really become interested in like wanting to, as I, ask the other questions to other people, like connect to your indigenous side and like become like really proud of it, and wanting to say that you're native to these lands too.
It's kind of funny though. I started watching conspiracy videos, and then I started watching Alex Jones and early Alex Jones. Not that I continue watching him, but I started watching Russell Means, and then I started to see a couple other guys, but that kind of got me into that zone. After that, I started to go to Colombia a couple times and seeing how the people would practice their traditions, their customs, the food, music, everything. I mean, looking at my mom's side of the family that has a lot of indigenous and African, and then looking to my dad's side, that's Spaniard, Jewish. So I was like, how is this even possible? It was really weird because, growing up in Florida in Hunters Creek, there was a lot of Puerto Ricans. There weren't really many Colombians. And during the Bush era, there was a lot of racism.
Sure.
And so that kind of pushed me. It's like, so what is a Latino? What is a Hispanic? Is it the language? Is it what is it? I didn't really quite understand. And coming from a Colombian family, race is kind of, the whole mestizaje thing wasn't really talked about. It was just about more of colorism was brought into the conversation. That's it. So it was a sense of not knowing where I belonged, and you want to know where you belonged. So I asked my mom, and I'd asked my uncles. It just went from there.
Thanks a lot for sharing that. And Leah, you've been in support of it, ever since you've been with Juan.
Ever since birth.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, silly me. Yeah.
No, I definitely tried to help him in so many ways to connect with his inner native being. I mean, he's gotten to the point to where he's tried my native foods. I've told him about my native traditions. He'll tell me about his, and I'll ask if there are other things that he wants to do whenever he does go back to Colombia, and not just show me the cities, but also show me what he feels like his ancestors did. I mean, I grew up in a very native family where we grew up close to the res. I have families all over the reservation, so it's like it's different hearing people not grow up like me and be as connected to their ancestors as I am. So it's interesting, but it's definitely different, and I'm happy to hear that Juan, really wants to be connected into those past ancestrals and just kind of learn every step of the way and just guide, and it's great, and it's really just one step at a time.
Yeah, without having to say, I'm from this place or I'm from this tribe, just kind of going back into the genealogy, going back to the family, and just learning about it, and that's it, and helping them. And
with everything that he grew up with, being surrounded by simple jokes and things that were said toward him about his skin, is just like, it's amazing, because I never experienced anything like that from where I grew up.
Sure.
And he was telling me, oh, well, white people always ruled the school. They would say minor things about the way I looked, and I'm like, wow, the white people that I grew up with stood up for us.
Mm-hmm.
And they wanted to always be a part of, celebrations that we had, and tried sheep multiple times, and some of them love fried bread and tortillas, and it's just funny to hear those things. But then now he's just like, you know what?
Can't believe I went through that.
I'm really happy for who I am, and that's truly amazing, because I feel like we should all just be happy for the fact that we've come this far with every single bit of fight that our ancestors had in them.
Yeah.
And
right.
yeah, it's truly amazing hearing everybody's story about their people and their family members before, and just getting different insights and more of a personal insight, other than just what I've read from history books and from personal books from other people, just getting more of a up close and personal. It's really great.
Yeah, I agree with you. And that's an excellent point you made, is that despite the history of colonization, the removal of the native person out of his essential world, right, into this very westernized society, and yet here we are in 2022, we have people on this panel that are wanting to connect to their native roots and whatnot, and we have people like you and others that support it as well, so and allies that aren't even a native, so it's just really beautiful to see, because our ancestors came a very long way, so I think they'd be very happy or proud to see this right now amongst many other people, and what they're doing as well, that are connecting to their native side, native roots, right? So yeah, thank you guys both. And then Sidley, I want to make sure I pronounce your name, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, Sidley. So what really, you did come from, you were raised in California, correct? And then so you've always had a connection to where you came from in your community.
Yeah, because fortunately, because my mom is Chicano, she and my grandpa was coming here as an obrero, and he was able to through reform be going back and forth, because that's the reason why they don't have reform. That's the reason why that border is there. It's not to just keep us out, it's to keep us in. How many people do not visit their family back home because funerals, they don't go back home and keep connecting and being there in their culture, in their ceremonies? Why? Because that border is there to keep you locked in and exploitable. Okay, so the last reform was many, many years ago, and that was in my grandfather's time, and he he migrated his family, so my mom was able to be legal here by the time she was 15, because half of the family was born in Hujucar. And then after that, she was able to take us to visit my dad's family, because they always wanted to see their grandchildren. So anybody that has that privilege or opportunity should really go and travel back home. Go during the summer. If you have children, take your children. Go back home and see what things are really like, because they will have that connection. They will, they will miss how things are over there, and they'll learn where their pueblo is, and who the families are and their family name over there, it might be different, than their family name, just from their mom and dad. They have their family name from their pueblo too. And so all those little pieces are lost, and the assimilation happens so quick. On top of it, we have a deforestation in a lot of our pueblos. We have miners, all that. So then also detribalization happens very fast too. A lot of natives getting completely out of their homes, military borders in the Mesoamerica, in the far south in general. So these are all the things that we're fighting against. And to be able to have that connection and security in ourselves and our identity, I think it's really important to go back home. As an adult, if you have children, take them home so that they meet their family. And also support the advocates that are for reform, such as Florence Spanish. She's an advocate for reform for displaced peoples, and she also recognizes herself as Indigenous. And so to support those people in our community that are looking forward, they're looking forward and really, really seeing that we are a force. So we should be allowed to have reform also. That would make it easier for us to connect back home. That would make it easier for us to have knowledge when we come back. And we're also seeking connections with our relatives from this side of the border, because a lot of our values do align, actually. There's not a single tribe on the border that's recognized that wants that border there, really. The Kumeyaay have protested against it, and a lot of times that they have a call for action. We're not ready as a people to come together and really join forces. Oftentimes I see Chicanos advocating for other things, which are great as well, but let's also not forget about our relatives here. What our recognized relatives are looking for is sometimes also aligned with what we are also looking for. So to become more informed on these matters, which the border is a huge one.
Yeah, thanks for that.
But yeah, basically, yes, I've always been knowing where my people are, but I am displaced. All my upbringing is here. So that's why I always say that's where I feel more comfortable speaking on and also advocating for, because those are the issues that we face. Coming here, displaced, not being able to go back home, sometimes experiencing rejection, or maybe not the resources to connect on this side. So those are all things that we as a community need to work on. So it's oftentimes appealing to the government doesn't really help. So we have to be there for each other.
Yeah, that's true. The government isn't always going to be able to be there to provide any type of support at all. So it is really important to rely on those that genuinely care about you, and brothers and sisters that are there, right? So yeah, thanks again, Cindy. And I think before we wanted to move on to the other topic here, and I know I had sent you guys all the script, right? And we thought about playing Kahoot, but I think just because of time constraints and just because I didn't give myself enough time to set all this up, we might have to put Kahoot aside. Maybe next time or another day. But before, and I think, again, I wanted to direct this question to you, Cindy, is there's a lot of people out there that really want to argue against the whole reconnecting detribalized movement, right? Or people wanting to see themselves as native. And you'll have people out there that will say that this is white man science or this is, what do they say, race science or something of that nature, or just because you look phenotypically native, that doesn't mean that you should say that you're native, right? So I'm just curious what your response is to these particular people, right? Because I'm sure you've seen my conversation with Decolonized Buffalo. I've had the fortune to have him on here, right? So we tried to have good debates and whatnot, and just talk, right? Talk it out, because that's what matters, right?
I would say, just I already have a strong opinion on this. So I would say that we respect that there are people that are ethnically, culturally indigenous, that in their nations they've married out and with other what we would call other races, right? Scientifically, we would call that other races, and they don't see it that way. They see themselves as nations, and they don't see that.
Sure.
That's okay, and that's fine with them, and that's according to their history. So we also have to maintain be historic, depending on where we're talking about, what region we're talking about. There's some places that are still highly racialized based on how you look, whether you're recognized or not. How you look, that's what people are going to treat you as, call you, how you are not. So it's important to recognize that as well, and to recognize some very unsettling truths. And I have this book right here that I highly recommend. It's called The Unsettling Truths. And to learn the history, when they were scalping natives and paying for the natives that were scalped, it was black hair, straight, long hair of people that they knew were natives. It wasn't blonde hair. It wasn't other kind of hair. You know what I mean? So we do have a phenotype. We do have a look. We do have adaptations that happen on our land specifically. We are the people of the land. They keep pushing that date back. We've been here evolving and adapting here. Paleo humans came here. So, it's important. To me, phenotype, we should be mindful of that when we speak on Indigenous issues. We cannot completely disregard it and look at it through one lens, because that's also homogenizing. That's homogenizing the way we think and who we are. So we have to be mindful about that.
Yeah, thank you for that response. Yeah, I think it is important to be mindful of, like, I think this is just to other people in general, right? That want to say that, we shouldn't say that we're native, but okay, so then is the Incan Empire, did they even exist, right? Because if you're saying that I'm not native, then you're dismissing basically the hundreds of years that my ancestors were here, right? And likely I had Incan ancestors, correct? So am I not a descendant of them? I think it's just kind of
Absolutely are. The descendant of people that just survived the invasion. They survived disease. They survived wars of independence of these countries. They've survived a genocide. They've survived a caste system in Latin America. So they've survived despite all that. Whether they had to hide away or forget their culture, or were not even allowed. Our people were not allowed. That's the thing. In where I'm from, a treaty was signed in 1821 called the de Igualdad, and that was supposed to make it so that all natives had rights and we free people and no longer under the caste system. Well, when that was signed, the first line states that the only religions that are going to be practiced are the Catholic religion, no others. And if there's others, it would be under penalty. So we never have gotten our freedom. We've been through so much, and we're still surviving that erasure. Those laws, those treaties that have just been used to appease us and manipulate us. We're still fighting all that, and we survived despite of that. So I would not let anyone that's phenotypically native. I wouldn't accept that they're told, "Oh, you're not native because you don't know their culture." I don't align with that view at all. I think that's false.
And I think the caste system is still used in a lot of countries that speak Spanish. I think when I went back after 20 something years in Mexico, I experienced racism because of the way I looked. We stayed, because my husband's from Colombia, and my family didn't want to let him stay at their homes because I come from a very, very, very poor town. So we stayed at a hotel, and then even there, even if it was in Mexico, and even though we had money, I was discriminated against in Mexico. I'm like, there's more racism in Mexico towards me than in the South, and that says a lot. And it was just because of the way I spoke, and he didn't get the same treatment because he's a little bit he's taller, he's Asian looking, but he's a little bit lighter than me. And just seeing that, it really affected me a lot. Like the caste system is still visible. It's still visible in a lot of countries in
Yes, it
Latin
is.
America.
Yes, it is. And to say that, to deny privileges, to deny privileges is not okay. I mean, my mom is a fair-skinned Mexican, mixed uh, Mexican person of lineage of colonizers and the original people of Huejucar that mixed during the revolution because during the caste system they were not allowed to mix. The natives in Huejucar were in the mountains, sent to the mountains, and the people of Huejucar were, in the good area, the lower valley area, and they kicked them up there. And when the revolution happened, mixing happened, everything happened. So that's often the story of a lot of these towns that were originally settlers, but then they got mixed during the revolution. A lot of haciendas were burnt down. A lot of things happened during that time. A lot of trauma happened too. So yeah, we cannot deny that mixture and that privilege that happens when you're lighter or mixed, as opposed to, let's say, my grandma, which is just from her pueblo always, and she looks very phenotypical of the southern people. It's up to the more privileged ones, the ones that have the language, the ones that have studied, the ones that might even have lighter skin privilege, to speak up for those that don't have that, not to deny it, and don't feel like your indigeneity is less, and so you deny the fact that exists, that privilege exists out there, and that in Mexico the caste system is very alive and well. So the ideologies of, let's say, nations that don't see color, they don't really apply to some other people. That's the reality for some of us in the South and in Latin American countries.
A little quick fact about Colombia, where they're doing the hiring. My husband told me this, but when they're doing the hiring, you have to submit a picture with your application. So there's this, they go through the applications and they see who they want. And if you go to Colombia, the people that have the most, like the good jobs and the better homes and whatnot, they are of lighter skin. And it's not just in Mexico. I strongly believe it's throughout Latin America. It's really bad.
Yeah, I think that's why some people get triggered when that topic comes up, because some people are very adamant about that. And it's like, but that doesn't apply to everyone, That's not really how it is for some people. They're still highly racialized, and there's still a lot of erasure going on. So, as soon as some people mix a little bit, they're right away labeled something else. Even though it's an old and outdated colonial term, I've seen it thrown around out there by people that I suppose are highly informed, mestizo, that word, that's meant to remove us from what we really are.
And that term they use when they're trying to find somebody else to like marry into the family, they're like, find somebody that's lighter than you to mejorar la raza. Like that is so racist.
Yeah.
Like,
so it's
why
very
can't
triggering. Yeah, it's a triggering topic.
Yes. Why can't you marry why does it have to be lighter to make your family better? It doesn't have nothing to do with making your family better. It's just the way culturally it's accepted in Latin America. And that terminology needs to stop.
In a lot of places, but I do see that in a lot of pueblos originarios, what I hear is that, like, the majority is always going to be in the pueblos originarios. The majority is, most people are phenotypical, but you will have other people that are mixed, lighter. We have everything. So what my grandma always said is like, we're native, but we have other races because the invasion, because when the Spanish came. So we know that there are other races, we acknowledge that. And in our communities, we don't focus on that either. When we leave our communities and we go to the city, when we go to this country, that's when the colorism really happens. Who's getting pulled over more? You know, it's people that are racialized, indigenous, darker skin, and that it's obvious that they come from the Latin American countries that are still majority indigenous, whether detribalized or not. You know, they get racially ID'd very quick as opposed to people that are fair skin. And that's just, or should I say lighter skin. And that's just how it is. So yeah, we can't deny the colorism, the targeting of people that are darker, all that anti-indigenous that still happens even within our communities. Yeah, it's still happening. I agree with you.
Sorry, I was saying we should just universally ban that term. Was it Major La Raza?
Mejorar la raza.
Mejorar la Raza, yeah, yeah. It's just a very racist term. But yeah, so thank you all for sharing that. I think before we open the panel up to those that were inquisitive on joining, possibly, we want to move on to like the final part here. And that is, you know, the best way to move forward, right? Like I said in the beginning of the video, you know, our time is like here, right? There's a lot of people that are like noticing this. I even see people that don't agree with the whole reconnecting detribalized, but they bring it up too. So that means people are kind of catching on, regardless of if they disagree or agree with it. People are talking about it, or noticing it more. So now that, you know, we do have people's attention, you know, what's the best way, would you say, to like move forward? Obviously, like I said in the video, like letting more people know, right? Like to be proud of like who you are and where you came from, right? Like your native like roots and your indigenous side. But I'm curious, like, what would you say is like the best way to, you know, support like a native community? For example, let's pretend that I live in like, oh, I don't know, Virginia or like Georgia, right? Where there's no like communities around me. So what's the best way I can like show my support? If anyone had anything they wanted to add, because maybe someone can relate.
Well, that's what I'm doing. Like I try to help out with communities like Shoko's community. I live in the South, and there is no, even within my community of Hispanics, there isn't a lot of Hispanics that see this topic. And even there's indigenous here in my town. I've met several that spoke Nahuatl from Chiapas, no, Guerrero. There's like a big community of Guerrero people that spoke the language. I met a guy from Chiapas and one from Guatemala that was Mayan and spoke the language, but they don't want nothing to do with, or it's, everybody's so divided. But what I try to do is, like, I found Shoko online and try to help out in whatever I can. And I find other people online and just start talking to them. Whoever I have this, that I speak what I learned, and that motivates me to let other people know about. Like, that's my thing. If you're willing to hear me out, that's what I want people to do. Like, whoever I meet at the store, I just start talking to them, and I notice that they're indigenous, but they don't know, or they don't want to know, or they're ashamed of. I'm like, I just start talking to them, and I'm like telling them everything that I know, because it just seems to me that it's my duty, because I know the issues and I know the history, and I come from a town where most people don't want to hear it because they're so blinded by religion. And even though people don't want to hear it, I still speak to them and tell them and let them know that this is what has happened to our people. And the one question I asked them: so why are you here? Like, why are you here? Why aren't you not in our town? And that kind of opens up their mind. But I've met a lot of people here in my area, and I also do try to help out other communities, and I connect through Facebook or YouTube, wherever I can whoever wants to listen to me, and I do speak a lot.
No,
That's how I do it.
no, I enjoy everything that you
Yeah,
said.
I'm
Thank
loving
you.
it.
Yeah,
For once,
definitely.
it's not me talking too much.
I wanted to apologize really quick. I did not mean to highlight that spam bot whatever when I was deleting it. I guess I accidentally highlighted it, so that's why it appeared. So anyway, it's been blocked now. I don't know if anyone saw that, but yeah, thanks a lot, Sylvia, for that. So was there any type of like maybe events? I don't know. Miles or Steven, you've been able to attend in Texas or anything you've heard of at least for our friends that have been able to go to like a powwow or any sort of like event native related? Because I think you've mentioned something I thought in the Discord a while ago.
Yeah, I mean, there's a so the American Indians of the missions in Texas, they're one of the groups, and so that's the Top Pilam tribe, and they have a pretty active presence here in San Antonio. So they do a lot of work. And of course, with the Karankawas, like, we're fighting Enbridge. So down there in Corpus Christi, they're trying to build a new pipeline over one of our religious sites, and where there's already confirmed, even by the Texas State archaeologists during the environmental report that they had to do, that there's well over like 10,000 artifacts and stuff on this one plot of land. And there's plenty of other spaces, so they have an injunction right now, but obviously it's always ongoing until it's resolved.
Yeah. Thanks a lot for sharing that.
Yeah, but one of the things I did kind of different this year, instead of going to like one of the rights or marches or protests, I just went. So we had the Monarch Butterfly Festival here in San Antonio as well, because we're on the migration route. And it was really cool, just engaging people with a different side of like indigenous culture and history. Is like, we knew how important, all these migrations were, and we were in tune to all that and everything. And it's really great, just still educating people about how important it is to have the plants ready for them, and that we need pollinators. Like, you literally can't eat food if you don't have flying insects.
Yeah.
So yeah, that felt a little bit better to me this year than say like going to the typical march and protest at the Columbus Park, in your city. It's going to go down, and it's going to have some good. Don't get me wrong, I'm not like dismissing them, but I'm just trying to find other ways to engage the community and that way, instead of just like the standard stuff like marching and protesting all the time, because it takes a toll, man, and it gets tiring, and it's hard work.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I saw the protest over in the part of the video that I highlighted. Where was that protest at? It was just recent, right? Standing Rock, I think that was it. Yeah, and it looked like I think people were there for like days on end, right? Like almost weeks, maybe. So I can imagine how much of a toll that takes on like the human body to be there and support like one another, especially like when the cops came, right? And like other people from it wasn't just the police, but it was some other organization that came, right, to quell the protest. Is that the correct word? Quell. Yeah. So I get where you're coming from. So yeah, thanks a lot for sharing that. And did anyone else have anything they wanted to like add as to advocate for those that are just kind of like starting to, take pride in like who they are, showing more the interest in like their native side? Would anyone have any suggestions or advice on that? Okay, cool. Sorry, I was actually reading a comment really quick. Let me just... okay, so let's see here. I'm just going to go over some comments. Yeah, Karina said, donate money. It'll make a difference, even if it's a small amount, right? Because I think I talked about that in the video, like that, to help, our friend Choco in his community, even if like a small amount helps, right? It goes a long way to help our friends out. So, yeah, if no one has anything else, I think we'll open the panel up, but I want to make sure that's okay with everybody.
Can I just read this poem real quick, which I thought it was really awesome with the Indigenous Day, if you don't mind?
Sure, yeah, please.
Okay. So this is by Cuauhtemoc. So our sun has gone down. Our sun has been lost from view and has left us in complete darkness. But we know it will return again, that it will rise again to light us anew. But while it is there in the mansion of silence, let's join together, let's embrace each other, and in the very center of our being, hide all that our hearts love, and we know is the great treasure. Let us hide our temples, our schools, our sacred soccer games, our youth centers, our houses of flowery songs, so that only the streets remain. Our homes will enclose us until our new sun rises. Most honorable fathers and most honorable mothers, may you never forget to guide your young ones, to teach your children while you live how good it has been and will be. Until now, our beloved Anahuac, shelter and protect our destinies that our ancestors and our parents enthusiastically received and seated in our being. Now we will instruct our children how to be good. They will rise themselves up and gain strength. And as the goodness make real their great destiny, in this our beloved mother Anahuac. So it's from the last Cuauhtemoc, the last Teotihuacán of the Mexica. I don't agree a lot of what they did, but I feel that this kind of sums all of our indigenous culture that has gone for these 500 years, and that we need to wake up and unite, all of us together.
Thanks for sharing that. That was beautiful. Sorry, Steve.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. I wanted to add on, you shared that article with me, by the way, Sylvia. I read it. It was really fascinating to learn that, the Tlaxcalan people, even during the times of colonization, where a lot of us believe that they were treated almost on the same level of Spaniards were.
Oh, yeah.
They were, in reality, a lot of them were not, right? There was still a lot of mistreatment going on. And a lot were worked to death. So it's sad of what happened there. So yeah, just learning a lot about that. So yeah, thanks for sharing that article.
But that's why they still have now last names, because they most were given that right by the Spanish. And in my town, that happened the same, because they united with the Spaniards, but it was after the massacre. It's not like they were willing to go and fight with the Spanish. They were forced. They massacred women, children, and men. So the ones that were left behind, they were given certain rights for those people that still maintain their now last names. So there's not a lot of people that have now last names in Mexico. It's just Tlaxcala and Cholula that I know of.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I read an article earlier about a particular Mexican person. I forgot the name of this person. I think it was an actor and actress, maybe, but they had a Nahuatl sounding first name, right? So it was really beautiful to see the Nahuatl sounding the names to be praised, for children to have those names. It shows that, despite, many of the disagreements I have with Latinidad, with a lot of certain aspects of Latin culture that greatly tries to diminish the indigenous side, it's nice to see that the names of the Nahuatl names are being welcomed, right? And children have those first names. So it's a step in a good direction, despite the many centuries of colonialism and neo-colonialism, honestly. Sorry, you're going to say something?
No.
Okay, cool. So Yeah, I think we're just going to open the panel up to see if anyone just wanted to share anything. And to those of you that are on the panel right now, if you have like stuff like busy things going on tomorrow, please, you're more than welcome to head on out. Go to sleep or whatever you guys got to do, right?
Yeah,
Steven, you got to roll out.
Yeah, I got garden work in the morning, man.
Sure. Yeah, man, no problem. Hey, I appreciate you coming in and everything.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Y'all behave in the chat.
I'll watch over him.
All right.
Thanks,
hey, it was
man.
nice meeting all you sisters and brothers and hearing everybody. And it's so great. I look forward to doing it all again. Me and Marcus, we got something lined up too in the not too distant future together.
Definitely. Love the video.
All right.
Thanks, man, again for everything. See you, Steven. Did anyone else possibly have anything they got to go to? Because I don't want to impede.
I think I'll get going. I have to wake up really early.
Sure. No worries. No worries at all.
Thank you so much for giving us this space.
Of course.
It means a lot. It means a lot.
No, it means a lot that you were willing to come on, sacrifice your time to come on here. So thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night, everybody. It was nice to meet you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Bye. Good night. So here's how this is going to work, my inquisitive friends that want to come on. To those of you that I know, I'll let you come on. But if I see that you're like someone that's very unfamiliar, I'm going to ask you to cam up, or you're going to have to cam up before I let you come on the panel. So I'm not letting this day be ruined. So let me get the link really quick. And I will share it on the panel in the comments. Okay. So, yeah, I hope, Tinley, did you enjoy it for the most part? This is your first time on. So
yeah, I really did. Thank you so much for having me on and letting me share space here with you. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, usually I don't talk much about like my background and stuff. I kind of just stay on topic. But whenever I share space with other natives, I always appreciate being able to do that. And always, kind of like promoting and letting people know, like even in places in Mexico where they like to push the mestizaje and they like to, where we're known for that, for the mixture of culture, there are still very traditional towns there. So, it's important to know that and to research about that too, because a lot of our media doesn't get that news, and so it's good to do your own research about what's going on back home, especially with environmental crisis and the environmental crisis that includes the murder of a lot of land defenders and water protectors in Mexico.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm glad that you could come to a space where we do talk about these things and really bring us together and figure out what we can do for the betterment of not just us, but again for our land here and the world here as well. So that being said, I think let's see, we got Quali and someone else named Dio. Oh, is that who is? Oh, all right. I see my other friends on here too. Let me add you guys on here. Let me scroll down really quick.
You're in the show.
Hey, friends. More. Is that you? It's good to see you.
Hi.
Hey, Quali, and hello, Quali, to you too. Sorry, I haven't seen More for a while, so I was excited. But I'm excited to see you too as well. So thanks, guys.
We're all excited for our friends. Me too. I'm like, hey, Quali.
Yeah, everybody.
Friends here.
Hey.
How's it going?
Good. We just had a really excellent conversation about like what we can do, right? As native or brown people that how we can come together, right? Because from what I've seen, and I've only been in this like sort of like holding the channel everything for almost 2 years now, right? But at least from my perspective, I see a lot more people being like proud of like their native roots, right? But obviously it's cool to do that, but we want to know what we can do like the next step forward. And obviously we want to like support others from like communities. You know, donations are also good as well to, you know, less fortunate people like brothers and sisters. But what more can be done, right? To make sure that what we are like advocating for is more well known, more welcome. You're looking good, my friend.
Hi everyone. Sorry, my mic was off. I was saying Tizad, then I realized my mic was off.
Yeah. Well, it's all good. And Quali, you're looking nice too. So again, yeah, you guys all look great.
You guys.
Yeah, really nice too. You guys look great.
Thank you. Thanks. So yeah, what did you guys do? Were you guys here for the whole thing? Did you guys see the funny video that Juan made actually? But you know,
I missed it.
I did. Oh, you have to go back. More, you might like it. I had Francisco Pizarro in it and Keiko Fujimori, Alberto Fujimori. You have to watch it.
No.
Okay. Yeah, it was funny. It's all in good humor for the most part. So yeah.
I think I would like to answer that. I think that maybe more art, more fashion, native fashion, more artwork too in general. I'm not seeing that much artwork. It's just kind of like rare, you know. It should be kind of more like flooding, you know, but it's not. And maybe more events, like fundraising for events.
Yeah, definitely more fundraising. I agree. As you can see, more you have a small fan base here that was waiting for you.
That is so nice. I have no idea who that is. And I agree, by the way,
Okay.
with what she just said. Like,
Yeah, fundraising events, right? Like again, like we have a base of people here that want to like be proud of the roots, right? So again, like what can we do to help support like one another, but also do something for the betterment of the people here, of the world, of this part of the continent. And I think that's really good because it shows that like, you know, we do care about others, right? We're not just here to say that, okay, yeah, you know, we're proud of our identity. We can do more things than that, right? We're not just like, well, some one-dimensional, as what do they say, one-trick pony, right? There's a lot more than that. That's great that you said that, Quali. So thank you. I hope I didn't say what I said was like offensive. I was just like trying to bring out my points.
No, yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, were you going to say something else?
No, I'm sorry. I'm just like mumbling in the background.
Sure, that's okay. It's no worries. So yeah, fundraising, and I think what I think that oh, and you said fashion, right? And clothing and whatnot as well. Of course, there's a lot of people out there that are working on like clothing and fashion design and whatnot, and it's great to see. Also, so certainly more of it would be you know, certainly welcomed. So I guess what I think could be beneficial could be really reaching out to those people that, you know, live out in, I don't know, maybe the Midwest or the most like barren states. And again, like not advocating, but like creating some sort of way to connect with them because they're not close to any native communities. I kind of brought this up earlier, right? Where they're away from, you know, so-called Hispanic communities completely, right? But they're also cut off from any like native communities in their state. What states could I be talking about? Like Maine or like maybe anywhere in that Northeast region? I think it's Northeast region. Yeah. Or Georgia or the South, right? Not so much maybe like Florida, obviously, but maybe in states like Georgia or the Carolinas, right? Where a lot of the native communities that were once there, unfortunately, were forced to go, you know, through the Trail of Tears. And now many of those communities are not obviously in the South anymore. They're in states like Oklahoma, if my history is accurate, correct? Let me make sure. So I think that like, you know, what I said in the video that we want to spread the word, that's good. But I think just really honing in on those people that could also like support this movement, but also feel somewhat lost, right? That's just one thing. Not like lost, but like not out of touch, but just
I
maybe feel helpless in some ways because they can't do anything. But they have these videos, right? So that's why just providing more information for those that aren't connected to those areas. I know Luis here said Minnesota, but there's actually some Native communities in Minnesota, if I'm not correct. But certainly people that live maybe far up north could benefit from that. I hope what I'm saying is clear, right? I'm trying to bring out a good point.
No, that is
But
a good point. And that's one of the reasons why I believe that Native American history should be taught. It should be like a federal law that all schools, all public schools, have Native American centered education. Like our history, you know, it starts with our ancestors that first set foot here, settled, and then created pristine civilizations that were not influenced by any others. We have two of them here on this continent. So it's like we need to teach that, you know, instead of teaching about cultures, you know, we're learning about feudism, we're learning about like the Roman history. It's very Eurocentric, the education. So to support initiatives like the California Native Initiative, Education Initiative, um, they're trying to push that in California. That bill passed, and we're hoping that that goes. You know, it could go nationwide. You know, get involved with those initiatives. Like keep an eye on those because they do need help from the community. Like you know, the assembly people push them through, but then they need the educators to have input for the displaced communities to also, you know, speak for themselves in there because they allow you know, displaced natives from other countries to be part of those meetings. So it's good to follow up on those things because I think that we need everyone to know our history first and foremost and to understand what natives really went through here. Once our numbers were decimated because of disease and slavery, then, you know, the white man looked for other alternatives. And so to start the story from the start and to also recognize that we are still here. And the reason why they don't want to tell the story is very easy. Once people know about that, you know, if we know where they come from, then, you know, maybe you'd see real land back then if people get more educated and know what really happened to the people. And that's the reason why they suppressed our history. It's very intentional, the suppressing of our history, the erasure. There's a lot of myths, you know, the myth of discovery, right? We weren't discovered. And also the vanishing natives, you know, that always that thing of, oh, where they got to a place and well, those people are not there anymore. No, the people are still there. They're just obviously not living in their ancient cities any longer, but the people are still there. And so we don't want to be erased. We're still here. So we have to support those initiatives that are led by recognized natives, because as the detribalized people, we have a lot of political power. We have a lot of presence here. And that's a political power in a market that everybody wants to manipulate and have their hand at.
What was the
But
name of that bill?
it's really our choice, right? What we want to do as a people, what we want to support. Do we want to assimilate further from ourselves, continue blancamiento, you know, anglicize, or do we want to go back to our original communities, help our people, and keep affirming our identity, which is still being erased?
What was that bill name?
It's I forgot the name of the bill, but I'll type it in the chat so you guys will know. But you could look up the California Native. You can look that up on Instagram. That's their hashtag, and there's all the information there. That's from the Assemblyman Ramos. His last name is Ramos. He's an assembly person here in California. He's a California Indian, and he's pushing that forward. And like I said, he's very open to educators from all Native backgrounds, even displaced. So it's good to you know, keep an eye out for that, because I do believe that education is the biggest way, and I think art is one of the biggest way, because we are we are very creative people, very centered around our art, because our ancestors had the luxury to do that because they were agriculturalists in in Mesoamerica, so they were able to make a lot of art. So I definitely think that continuing to do that is really good too.
Thanks for that.
I
Yeah,
think
definitely art. Please,
I
Juan.
think in addition to what she's saying, I think there should be like a group of Native Americans who are writers, and they should write essays in terms of what it means, like dissecting and analyzing what it means to be like Native, and like see their like from their perspective, and also in like in a philosophical tone as well, like really digging and analyzing culture, habits, customs, rituals, dress code, like all of that, and dissect it so that we can find something objective among like all of us that we can agree on. Because I feel like it's very noble and romantic to say like, oh, let's go back to how we used to be, but I mean the world as it is now is quite different, and so I'm not sure if everybody will be on board with that, but if we can somehow find some sort of objective ground that we can talk about ourselves and what our experiences are, I feel that we can probably unite in that sense more, and how we can, you know, build ourselves from where we are to the future, like not ignore the past or pretend like it's not there, but use it as a propeller to propel ourselves to what is coming in the future, you know what I mean? So I feel like we need to have writers, like that's how it happens, people that are writing essays, articles, and reflections, and all of that needs to be like output from us, so we can have like, so like what you're saying, it can be taught in school, right? Like how many Native American authors are there? How many? And when they're speaking about their Native Americanness, it's usually about the rituals, the myths, but like what is a Native American saying about other things, So I feel like all of us, if we are who we say we are, we need to do that ourselves. So
Yeah, that's
that,
to tell our stories, and there's many ways to tell the stories through visual art, through film, writing. There's a lot of natives that they're still living super traditionally, and they don't want that to change. There's a lot of people still in the Amazon that they want to preserve their culture completely. So it just depends, because there's so many tribes and nations and displaced peoples that it's like it's not, we all don't want the same thing across the board, and we all don't have access to the same things, and we might not all have the same skill sets or even the language, right? So we have a lot of things keeping us apart. But as far as the US goes, I think education is super important. Like it's desperately needed. And for, like, let's say tribes that don't, like, they don't have writers, and all that, like how are they supposed to tell their stories, right? Maybe through film, maybe through other ways. So there's various ways, and there's not just one way to resist. So I think,
is there
yeah,
like a native
writers are great.
is there like a native association that we can look into? Because it's such a huge project to undertake. Like there's so many of us all around America, like in South America and North America, and we know there's something that tie us, all of us together, but at the same time it's weird because it's like we do know that, but at the same time, like, we're all particular in our own ways, depending on where we live and what language we speak and all that. But like somehow we still agree that there's something about us that we like connects us all. So I totally agree. It's such a huge undertaking because it's not like it's pretty huge. I mean, like from political to entertainment, it's like
I
it's
think one thing that
huge.
unifies us, and a lot of people try to maybe kind of like dismiss that fact, and they don't see it as very important. Like we all come, no matter who we all come from three genetic flows, and the peopling of this continent. We have common ancestry. We have a common ancestry. We are a people, but we refuse to see ourselves as such. And I think that that's another barrier that keeps us from being the power that we could be in our own continents.
I not to interrupt, but I think there needs to be more democratic power within Latinos or however we want to identify as, because realistically, it's been just white Republicans who've been dominating this country. Now that there's a black judge, I don't remember her name, but that's kind of changing the playing field. So we just need to just invest in the right candidates and the right politicians and the right senators and so and so.
Yeah, I agree that certainly investing our time in like making sure or doing our best.
Elect the right people.
Yeah, elect the right people, right? Particularly like a lot of younger politicians would help as well.
To an extent, I agree with that, but also we have to remember that we can't really rely on the system as much as we would like to. So I like to focus on building community and investing in the community. And I think education is the most important thing. Native education from Native people to the community. And yeah, just investing and supporting the community and growing it, and then go from there. That's another way to approach it. That bill that you were talking about, it's Governor Newsom signed the California Indian Education Act, for anyone who wanted to read it.
Yeah, that's super important, and it's like happening in 3 districts, and it's happening where I live in Cahuilla land. So it's very exciting because we're gonna have our own educators and everything, tell that history, and also talk about the history of displaced people arriving and all that. And then that program could expand more. So and it's all for us, by us, and no one gave it to us. It's not like the governor came and offered it. This is all done by California natives that finally today can demand that, and they got it. So you know it's really good. There's good things happening. We see a lot of conflict, a lot of distractions, but the work that we put in, you see it. You see the results of when the community comes together, when we protect our boundaries, as a people. Don't let others speak over us. We can't speak for ourselves. We can get the things done. We just need to really come together on those projects. And like Wally said, doing that is through building community.
Yes. It's a good act. Yeah. There's a lot of opportunities there for writers that the other person mentioned, that we need like writers and teachers, and with this act you can partake and participate in that in the classroom setting. So that's pretty good, hopeful.
It's crazy how vastly different we are across the plane from North America to South America. Like to a certain degree, like Native Americans here have like like some level of access to education, while in South American countries and even just down a little bit south in Central American countries, like people are living in very rural conditions. So that vast difference of like awareness and you know being metacognitive of your situation and like your surrounding is so different like here than it is over there. And like I think that if the United States natives were to become who they want to become, inevitably like it would be like kind of like Napoleon. You know how Napoleon went around Europe? He was European, right? And he went around Europe conquering all these States is spreading democracy. So I feel like inevitably, if this like difference is going to persist, and these Native American, this United States Native Americans pass things, become, community holders and lawmakers, inevitably they're gonna go to a different community and install that ideology as well. Because we don't want to leave anybody behind, right? Like, are we okay with having like Native Americans in the jungle without access to a book, to reading, to things like that we have?
Well, about that, I would say, like, since they are the keepers of their forest, they are the people of that land, and they've always lived like that, and they haven't been impacted by colonization. And all they require from all these foreigners and assimilated folks is for us to not touch their forests, to respect their land, because that's, we need that. We need the rainforest. We need that, for the carbon dioxide and all that. So we don't want them to assimilate. We need to respect the people. So, I mean, you brought that up, and I would say, could that be a little bit of a Eurocentric view to think that, the way that they live is quote unquote primitive, or maybe that we have to catch them up to speed? I don't necessarily feel that way, that they need to be caught up to anything. I think that they're fine wanting to live that way, and us respecting their forests and the way that they live. I think that that's what they want. So it's always like asking and knowing what do those people of that land want. I know what the people from my land want. They don't want any more tourism, or people that are gonna stay there. They don't want people that are retired going and buying up land. So that's, in Chapala and Cajititlan, like, that's really what the people are suffering through. That a lot of displacement, a lot of foreigners of all types. They like the weather, they like it, but all this ruins the ecology in that area. The traffic, because they need roads, because they don't go there to live a traditional way. They don't go there to do things regular. They go to impose the lifestyle that they have here, that they've learned here. We don't need people with assimilated ways going back. Resource. We don't want to go and colonize. Yeah, we want to improve infrastructure, all of that, but let the people decide how much they want to do that, and let it be completely up to them. So I try to always see it that way. Like, I might see it a certain way, but maybe they don't feel that way about it.
I think the newer generation, like the younger generation, they kind of want to stray away from that because they feel like they're getting forbidden the knowledge. So it's kind of a mix of ideologies, I believe. But you're right. You're totally right. They should just be able to choose.
I agree.
I think I get like where you were coming from, but certainly, like, so basically what you're saying is just like seeing what we can do to help support them, right? And keeping it at that level. Like, if there's something that needs to be done, and obviously we have a lot of people here that want to come together, right? And we have the ability to do so, to change things, right? Just listen to Native voices from communities and how we can show our support, and letting them live like the life that they are wishing to live, and not feel like we may be might be impeding on it. I think, is that where you're coming from? Just want to make sure.
Yeah, like maybe we think that we're helping, but is that like kind of like a missionary mind, like that you're gonna be like, oh, we're gonna show you how you can write your books and your stories, and we're gonna build better houses, quote unquote. But really, that might not be necessarily what they want or need. Sometimes I think in the Amazon, especially, a lot of them are just kind of like they don't want contact, and the contact that is happening is because of this deforestation, because of the soya farms, because of the cattle farms that they level everything so that they could be cattle grazing. And so that we as consumers over here, we're also participating in all that. Everything's so interconnected. So always look to them and ask, them what they want, because actually, the natives have it right. Like they really just want to keep their land as is, and we need it to be as is. I mean, I'm a little bit against imposing anything like that, like like
The
for their
thing, like,
betterment, from our perspective. Always have to ask them what is better for you. How can we support you? What would you like to have done? Sometimes we need to be more active on the legislature. We might have to do petitions to bring attention to the companies that are doing this thing. For example, in Mexico, there's a company that's called Su Carne, and all throughout the land, they have a lot of toxic waste. There's some factories in Michoacan, there's factories in Nuevo León, there's factories all over. And so these are corporations that they get away with it because they take advantage of the small pueblos that they go set themselves up at. They know that the literacy rate is not great. They know that the people there cannot defend themselves. So that's where they're going to go and put their factories, which is poisoning the people. And people are being poisoned, where the air quality is bad, people have lung issues. Where I'm from, my community, from my dad's side, from my grandfather's side, they're from Michoacan, from a small community in Tanjuato, and that's their major issue. And so yeah, they need a lot of things. Sometimes it's like they're being colonized, and and they're being disrespected on their own land, and they're being even poisoned. So there's some urgent needs, then there's like things that we can wait on. There's just so much that indigenous communities need, honestly. That's why we need so many voices, and we need to let people speak for themselves. Natives aren't perfect. They don't have to
exactly.
be
How are they going
perfect.
to speak for themselves if they don't have the language to do it, like to use the vocabulary to go to Congress or to demand? They need to be able to have some sort of argumentative stance for what they believe. And you say let them choose. Well, they have to have some sort of informed knowledge to make a decision. And also, aren't they being like? It would be nice if like the rainforest was like intact and they're living their lives out there, and they're trying to be called, or somebody's trying to like teach them something new. But that's not the case. Like every day there's like tons and tons of deforestation going on, but like who is taking the time to go and advocate on their behalf? Not a lot of, well, I haven't done the research to be honest, but that I know of, there's like very little. Like, how many of them can go to their country's Congress and make an
They
argument
do.
as to why they
They
should
do.
stop? Like,
They
then
have.
at that point, you're just being paternalistic, and like you sort of like almost as if you were their parent and you have to like advocate on their behalf. Like they can do it themselves. They just need equal opportunities to use reason. Like every human being in the universe, in this world, has the ability to think. And it would be really sad to think like, oh no, they're okay the way they are. They don't need to,
I never said that
educate
they're okay the way they
themselves,
are. I
so
didn't imply that at all. Actually, I'm saying that they're not okay the way they are. They're being ignored, and they're not being heard and seen. Actually, there's a hashtag right now going on from a very specific tribe in the Amazon. It should be viral. It's happening now. Their leader was killed yesterday. They are speaking up, but they're not being heard.
So I think that maybe
Not
like
they don't want any more deforestation. They don't want miners in there. So these people have a lot of power. So it's just kind of like the people that are more numerous and are better prepared can help with that advocacy. They also do it themselves. They've shown up to protest. They are fighting for their life, actually. So yeah, I agree. They totally can speak up for themselves, but they need our support too, because we can do a lot of the footwork that's
But
sometimes hard for the people to pay attention. A lot of things happen because they go viral, because everyone's looking. So there are ways, like I said, that's happening now. It's happening today, and we should all kind of be on that and looking into it.
I think it
Definitely.
would help if people also like, I don't like in Peru, for example, like the only distinction between some people is that some of them are in tribes and other ones are like in like
Towns?
Yeah, in a town or an urban setting, and like racially speaking, they're like literally the same. So I think it would help too if like these city dweller natives would kind of like not see would see themselves as one and the same as the people who are living in tribes. I think that would help too. Like if a lot of us would sort of, recognize that aspect of ourselves and help them advocate for those sort of stopping deforestation and
Yeah.
representing ourselves in Congress or whatever, wherever the major decisions take place. You know what I mean? But a lot of the city dwellers, they don't identify themselves as native because somehow they ended up in the city. So now it's like they're no longer native. I don't know.
I know that a lot of the natives that were in Ecuador, I don't know if you were watching the reading about the Ecuadorian protest about farmers not making a profit. A lot of those people who were in the city identified with the farmers and the people in the Amazons and in the Andean region. So there's change going on, but it's got to start with them, not.
So, kind of to put into perspective and combine both, but like more and then Sintley, and I guess you two, Juan, everyone has said, but mostly, obviously, more and Sintley is that like focus on like all of us, right? Like natives, those that are in communities, and those of us that are reconnecting, right? Getting those that are us natives that are being proud of our native side, right? The tribalized, as they say, getting us up to speed, right? And figuring out like how we can like work together as one sort of like unit, so to speak, and then working on progress and advancement and what we can also do for those in communities, right, as well. Maybe not so much obviously like bringing them in, but like supporting them, right, and what they would need, and having their support for us is greatly always appreciated as well. But yeah, I think combining that together, I think is kind of good to go start from, but obviously this sort of process takes a while, but I'm proud to see what's gone on so far. I was trying to look at it from a positive point using both you and Morse.
There's a good point to both, because there's some natives that like they're in a situation where colonization is going to happen. It's happening to them, no matter what. So for them to be prepared, so that the colonial world doesn't catch them off guard and marginalize them. I understand what he's saying, that they can, but a lot of what happens in Mexico, what I've noticed, and there's a lot of studies on that a lot of the parents, like, that do speak the traditional language, their indigenous language, they don't want to pass it on to their kids, not because they don't want their kids to have that language, because they know that their child will be discriminated for it, that if they only know Spanish, they'll be more protected and accepted. So it's like, those are the things that are happening. So how can we make it so that they can know language and speak English too, learn different languages, and also keep their traditional language, their indigenous language? Like, there's so much potential for our people if they were not shamed for keeping their indigeneity. We are adaptable. We assimilate whether we want to or not to be able to survive, but to not have to, completely turn away from our indigenous roots. Those are more disconnected, or maybe more far removed because of forced assimilation. Really depends. But I think that the step number one is to stop having those misnomers applied to us, and to stop gatekeeping ourselves, that you are indigenous. You're not a descendant. You're not a watered down this or that because you don't have your culture. It's just you're literally a survivor of a genocide. So, I don't agree with people just falsely claiming or people imposing themselves or nothing, but that experience is a full and complete and important experience for people that were displaced and are now regaining their culture and identity. And we have to stop with all the misnomers. Latino, Hispanic, Mestizo, all that is erasure. If I hear people speaking that way, they lose their credibility as decolonizers right away.
Exactly. I want to add to that. I think that we would have to make that connection concrete, where people from the pueblos, people who are decolonizers in the decolonial community, detribalized, reconnecting, where they would stop speaking over us, because they're speaking over us, they're speaking our experiences for us as detribalized people, because they claim to know more than us about us, something like that. But that's false, because we have our own experience as detribalized people compared to the Pueblo indigenous people. So I think that we have to really work on making that, taking back our voice, and then making our experience very concrete, and then making that connection between the Pueblo and detribalized people, where the result would be that the Pueblos will become the next generation of detribalized people if we don't unite. Because we detribalized people, we were Pueblo people, and vice versa is going to happen. So I think it's more of that we need to just keep pushing for it and clearly, concretely make that connection, like the timeline, not timeline, but like we need to make that connection. Whereas the Pueblo people, their time is limited, and if we don't unite, they're going to end up being the next detribalized generation. So I mean, it's going to take a lot of voices.
Would you say it would take a lot of banding together from many,
Yes.
Activists to kind of prevent that from happening?
Yes, but the problem is right now we're just being spoken over. We're not being heard. So
Right.
we have to kind of assert ourselves as a detribalized people to the tribal, like, Pueblo people, and say, there comes a time where you have to respect and listen to detribalized voices and let us tell our story, our experience.
Well, even respect their spaces. I've seen it go as far as like the post or the conversation or the live has nothing to do with tribalized people, and they will go in there and say, well, you tribalized people are bad, 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 shame on you, this and that. Like, that's the tone, that is the energy that they're coming with. And so sometimes if you cannot come in a good way, don't come at all. We're not even saying accept us. We're even
I
saying
think regardless,
be there,
Yeah.
regardless of like trivialized or detrivialized, I think the most important thing would probably be education. Because I was just thinking about like what you were saying about the law, the bill that was just passed or something like that, or suggested, or is it about to pass?
That's already done.
So
It's going, it's moving forward, it's happening, and they fought very hard for that. California Native
exactly, I think that makes my point, right? Like you said that it wasn't an initiative by like the governor or by other races. It was like they themselves doing it. And the reason because it happened, they themselves doing it's because they have at some level they have access to education and literature and what it means to go and advocate and make an argument for what they desire or what they think is best fit for them, right? So they were able to do that because they live in the United States, where at some level we have infrastructure, and even if it's crappy, we have some sort of infrastructure even for the Native Americans, which is not the case in every single Latin American country. There are a lot of Native Americans who don't have nothing like close to what they have here, so they can't do that for themselves, and it would be really bad if that continues. So I think above detribalized or with a tribe or not, I think education should definitely be like the priority to advocate, to spread education among all those individuals through school, through literature, and all that good stuff, so they can just the same way that happened here, where they advocated for themselves and made an argument for themselves, so that other people around the world, other Native Americans, can also do that in their country and find a rhetoric to unite themselves. Because in Guatemala, 90% of the people are native. Like they may not see themselves as such, but they are, like racially speaking, you look at them and they're the same. Bolivia, Ecuador, Peru, Guatemala, Honduras,
Yeah.
most of those countries are, the majority of the people are the same race, but they don't view themselves that way. They view themselves as like mestizo or something like that. Like Argentina, you can argue that most people in Argentina are white. In Chile, in Uruguay, in places like that, in Brazil, but like go to Honduras, most of the people are the same race. Go to Guatemala or Peru or Bolivia or Ecuador, most of the people are the same race, but they divide themselves because of economics, education, last names. So we need to like, there needs to be some sort of like, talk and discussion about like how can those people, how can they have access to education? That would be probably the first step. More education for everybody, more access and more education for everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For now,
What do
we
you think,
can use
Marcus?
social media for now.
Yeah, I agree with more. You know what's funny is just like the term mestizo is quite like silly to me even more that they use it now, because like you have people that are like that don't even have like any European like DNA or blood whatsoever, but they would call themselves mestizo if they're living in Lima, right? Because they've been taught in the education system and they don't think anything like different, unfortunately, right? Because if you watch the video that I posted in the beginning of this podcast, it was Dr. Jack Forbes, right? And he was talking about how there's many like native people that are not in South America that really don't understand what people like us are talking about, because they were taught in the system that they were believed to that was taught from parents or like their teachers or whatever, that this sort of thing cannot be true. So, but in reality though, they are, sorry, you're going to say
He
something?
suffered. Yeah, that's true. That they don't even know, and people think that that's crazy. Like, how do they not even know? Well, because if you were violently tortured, killed, oppressed, enslaved, suffered an epistemological genocide, not only a physical genocide, a genocide of knowledge, an erasure of knowledge. And what happens that, what we call it in Mexico, we call it like, it was a wiping of memory, right? Because and that didn't happen because our ancestors wanted to. Like, that didn't happen because they wanted to. In my pueblo, we still do the ritual to go down to the lake carrying like saints. And those 3 saints were taken away and given back to our ancestors twice, because our ancestors rebelled when their deities were taken away. Their statues that represented certain energies that were venerated during certain times of the seasons. So, we had to mix our culture with the Catholic culture to just kind of just kind of keep it surviving, keep it there. It's not like, it shouldn't be a surprise. It shouldn't be a surprise that a lot of people don't know. They were forced to forget who they were so that they could be exploited, so that they could be used, so that they could be erased and genocided. Like, nobody can deny the genocide. So how can they deny our identity? How dare they? I mean,
I want
I
to add
don't.
to what you said, Cindy. I think that we should, like, language is really important. So that's why I always try to put forced genocide or forced assimilation or violent assimilation. Because people think that it was a choice. This wasn't a choice.
I think a lot of like Native Americans who are not North Americans, like those of us who come from like other countries in Central or South America, like a lot of us need to like get over ourselves and go like do something in that particular part of the world, because trust me, there, like I watch a lot of like Peruvian news and like the media broadcasts like a lot of like what happens in Congress in YouTube, like they stream it, and like like nobody like has the same rhetoric that you're having, like that whole like this epistemological erasure of knowledge. Like
What are you
who
talking
says
about? My
that?
friends in
Nobody
Mexico
says.
speak of La Planta all the
Nobody says
time.
that.
We have a name for it in our culture. You're talking about the privilege to have identity politics discourse. This is
That's what
our
I say.
people
Like
know.
we
Like
need
our
to
I think he's
hear
people.
referring
that.
to Peru.
But
Like
I also feel
in
like he's saying
Peru.
that like we that are speaking about these issues are not looking at the correct issues, or that we're too caught up in our identity, kind of discourse. This discourse is important because when you have a bunch of people which are a great number and a great potential of power, political power, and they're thinking they're Latino, Hispanic, whatever, they have they don't have any affiliations, not because they don't want them, because they lost them. So now they're just pawns for politicians. I mean,
Well,
that's
that's what I'm
incorrect.
saying.
It's
That's what I'm
important
saying. That
here. That
people
discourse
should have
here
that rhetoric.
is very important because the moment our people cross the border, their name changes. They're different. And a lot of them are getting their kids taken away. All of this just because of identity. So identity politics is actually not only stays in an academic place or in a community place for dialogue, it also impacts people's lives. Like people are dying because of this identity denial. And identity denial
Well,
is a
I was only speaking on behalf of Peru because that's like the only thing I watch. But like I'm telling, like I'm in your side. I'm on your side. Like what I'm saying is like that sort of rhetoric that you're having. Like you don't hear that in the Peruvian like Congress and the people that are like they're obviously not white or and they never say something like the way that you like said. Like and to us it seems so like
which part,
so
because I feel
right,
like,
right? But
wait, which part?
a
If you
lot
can specify which part you felt
yeah
was something that you wanted to bring up, but you got to tell me which part because I said
the the part where you said like erasure of memory and knowledge, that's so true. It's crazy. And so people like in Peru, they like the way that I see it, it's like they see themselves as before and after the Spanish. Like they don't consider themselves like as part of like the culture that came before it, but more like
really
it's
interesting.
crazy.
That's definitely not our
Yeah.
view in Mexico. In Mexico, most Mexicans know and acknowledge the ones that are the people of the land. They know that they're either mixed or they're indigenous, and it's often based on we don't have blood quantum over there. We don't have any of that, so it's often based on liquorship, which is unfortunate, but it's also kind of common sense, and a lot of this discrimination is based on that. But yeah, there's definitely an acknowledgement that we have always been there, that we are the people, but there's an inclination to whiteness. There's a false idea that mejorando la raza. I don't know if mejorando la raza exists in Peru, but definitely for us that exists. And then it's the wiping of memory of our indigenous roots and trying to uplift the side of it only. That's kind of what they push as a broad culture. But each pueblo has its own thing going on. A lot of them, they're more isolated than others. Just really depends. But as far as Peru goes, I can't speak much on that. And the way people or the politicians see things in Peru, totally different than what's going on in Mexico. In Mexico, we have like a lot of corruption. We have cartels. We have native people that are, being disappeared because they're, against all this. So yeah, our people in Mexico don't have as much time for this kind of discourse, but they're affected by it. They're affected by erasure. They're affected by the border. They're affected by everything that's happening to us as a displaced people. That's what I really want to drive home. That what happens to the displaced, it does affect back home. It does affect us back home. We're still connected to our people. And if you don't know where that connection is, look for it. Talk to your grandparents. They'll tell you where you came from, and you can look up the issues that are happening there. So there, the internet is such a resource. Now we can connect with each other and share all these different points of views and, kind of, discourse like that. So we have a lot of resource now that we need to use.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys, for the
Totally
conversation. Juan, I hope you weren't waiting too long. I saw you
I'm
were in there.
sorry.
It's
My
okay.
phone died and I literally had it connected at 10%. It just went to 0. I guess it was just weird. But where were we in the conversation?
I think Moore was bringing up his perspective of, like, life in Peru and whatnot, and how it is a little bit different between Peru and Mexico, right? In terms
Yeah,
of
Mexico
how
likes
politics are.
what we say is Mexico likes to romanticize the ancient natives and cultures, and that we marginalize the present ones. So we have all these sayings. We even have the flag, which is inspired by the imagery of indigenous cultures. We have like a very strong indigenous root. So yeah. So when I speak for things, I'm speaking from a perspective of a Mexican indigenous person.
Right. It's very different from like Peru. It's like way different.
Or even like in Paraguay or Bolivia, I guess too. I wanted to ask Quali a question, and maybe others are maybe curious to answer this question as well. But Quali, this is mostly for you, and if you're okay with answering it, what do you think is, we're all in the U.S. What do you think is like the biggest like hindrance that's holding back detribalized natives like coming together? Now you've got issues like pretendians coming in. You have people that are like hardcore like gatekeeping, right? You could say wabos, but honestly they're like children to me. Or I don't know, the types of extreme political societies, or no, the modern societies that we're living in. Perhaps they lean in some sort of social way, something that you believe that is one thing that's really holding us back from like coming together. Is it like the people that advocate for Latinx, or like Latinidad, or something? So I'm just curious, if you don't mind, and then maybe one thing that you could see that could propel this movement.
I think the biggest hindrance is education, and then like other people's movements. Sad to say, I'm not saying they're not important, but they do, because we lack the education in our community. They just cling to other movements to participate in, and then to kind of like participate in and support and give their energy to and their efforts to those movements. And then we just kick to the curb, in our own communities. So we're kind of just invisible because of all the other movements going on, and the lack of education in school or in social media. The narratives in social media are the gatekeeping is very divisive. So we can't unite it's really difficult to reconnect to our pueblos, our tribes, to the people in Mexico and anywhere in Latin America. So what I think would be awesome is if we kind of like united to tackle the two things, the education and the gatekeepers, as they go hand in hand. We educate them, that tackles their narratives, their stereotypes about us, the false stereotypes that they have about us, and it will take away that ignorance that's hindering everything, because their talking points really don't make any sense when from an educated stance. Like they stereotype us as privileged people. They generalize that we're privileged when in reality most of Mexico is in poverty, and then the rest of the 29% is like in lower middle class. And I mean lower middle class, like barely getting by, working double, triple jobs. So when you add up the statistics, it's like 70% of Mexico is under, and 50% is in poverty. So I don't appreciate people telling us that our people who are in poverty are privileged. It would make no sense. And then we on the other side of the border are supporting those families, our families back home. So how are we privileged when we are, we have all these extra responsibilities? Yeah, we have college and English privileges, English language privileges, but we use those privileges to help our communities back home, our families back home. But yet we're stereotyped as, as these like privileged, selfish, like all sorts of nonsense. It's not true at all. Like this country makes a lot of money alone on the money we send back home. They make a lot of interest on that, just alone. So and then our families are working the hardest jobs and getting paid the least of anyone, the least of any race. So I don't like other races telling us we're privileged either, because that don't make sense either. There's a lot of talking points that are just not clicking. And so if we really spent the time to like dissect these one by one and put the stats and the facts together and piece it all together and work together, then I'm pretty sure that we can start to educate everybody. And I mean, they won't have no other choice but to like allow us to be in their circles, in their events, conversations, because then they would just look like they were just assholes, basically, for not letting us speak our voice and tell our truth. But yeah, it's just about pushing out the information that's out there, and there's a lot of information. Like I can just go on and on. I mean, the police brutality is at the same level, the murders, or even more so. There's studies out there that are working on it right now, updating the stats. But right now the stats are about equal. But we don't really hear that our community is being genocided by cops in the US. We just hear that we're privileged in many ways, but we don't hear like the facts. Like for example, there's a lot of erasure that needs to be undone as well, like the cops thing, but also like in our past, that pyramid, the Casta pyramid system, it's never accurate. It's always saying that the mestizos are super privileged, and then beneath that it's the Native Americans, and then beneath that it's African American slaves, right? But in reality, the Native Americans are at the bottom, and then it's on top of the Native Americans, it's the Africans. Because if you actually research, and you will find this information, that the Native Americans were paid less, were paid not at all, sometimes, and more than the Africans. The Africans were paid more. And that is because they were valued more, because they were going to work the lands more and continue to work the land more. Meanwhile, a lot more of our people were just getting overworked and then killed, and we were just disposable because we are the actual indigenous native people of this land. So it's about undoing a lot of indigenous erasure and pushing it out there, and then we can become more cohesive.
Do you think that's why a lot of the media doesn't want people to keep teaching critical race theory, because of the in-depth information of the Comecienda? I think that's how you pronounce it.
The encomienda system, of course. Yeah. Of course. All this information is suppressed. And then we ourselves are allowing it to continue to be suppressed by not talking about these things and doing the research.
Because it's pretty sad to just, I haven't read about it, but it's like pretty depressing.
It's indigenous erasure, and it's occurring right now, and they're not gonna speak our story accurate for us. We have to do it ourselves. So, I mean, I read that in one of the places you can read that about the slavery of our ancestors is in the American Holocaust, but you can further research in other places as well.
Thanks for that, Quali. I appreciate your, opinion, and I agree too. It was interesting that you brought up like that other movements have really tried to outplace or just like kind of get more credit in the media than whatnot than the native movements, right? So that's what you see as the biggest threat. So that's interesting. But I agree that the education system can really benefit us if we reach out to the right people to make a difference, right? Make a change. And of course, like teachers that are also de-tribalizing, I would say, or just like connecting to their native roots and those that support us that aren't even native, right? There's probably teachers on here. Well, actually, it was like a year ago. I had this teacher who I think she was white, and she had like thanked me for talking about the encomienda system and whatnot, right? And she said that she had like a class that she was talking to about this. I was just like, wow, like that's really cool. Like that you're gonna like teach about this sort of thing. So, there are a lot of people out there that aren't native, whatsoever, but are white, black, or Asian that do really do agree with what we say, what the channel stands for, and it's awesome to see that support. So, there are some good things out of this. So, yeah. Did anyone else want to answer that question? What they saw was the biggest negative thing that was holding this back, or something that could change?
Wait, what was the question?
Yeah, so the question I asked Quali was, what does she see as the biggest hindrance in... Hold on. Actually, before I tell you that question, there was one person on here, Mr. Mora, right? I think this guy has the channel a little bit wrong, or just doesn't understand what I'm saying, or maybe he wasn't here in the beginning, right? It's okay to be an American. I'm not advocating for not being an American, right? You can be as proud as an American as you want, but there's nothing wrong with being proud of where you come from, right? Has the native identity not been pretty much put down in most countries in terms of like you wanting to be proud of your native roots? Like that's always like constantly pushed by Latin governments that you're a mestizo, right? So I believe that the native identity has been pushed to almost extinction in some ways and be replaced by mestizo or Latino. It's called not Latino in Guatemala. It's I forgot what it's something Latino, right? Anyway, the point that I'm trying to get at is there's nothing being like wrong with being proud of your roots. If you're European, like Dutch roots, like yeah, it's fine, or your Chinese roots, whatever. So what's wrong with being Latina? What's wrong with being proud of your native roots? I never said anything about like not saying that you're American. So I don't know. Maybe you weren't here. This is your first time following the channel or what? So just wanted to clear that up. Yeah, Latino. That's what it's called in Guatemala. More. My question to Quali was what she thought was the biggest hindrance for like native people here in the U.S. to come together, right? Rather if that's like misinformation. Is it pretendians? Is it current like social movements? Is it like Latinx, Latinidad? Is it the push for I don't know. I think I said Wabos, but yeah, they're not important. Are there other movements that like are taking the place of native movements? So and then what was the best?
Sorry.
You're good.
I thought it was like interesting what Mora said, so maybe I'll try to give like a brief answer to both. I think I mean we are Americans. I don't think we deny that we're Americans or we don't identify as Americans. I identify as American all the time, like every day.
Yeah.
But I think where we're coming from is the fact that the fact that, you know, there, unfortunately, in other countries, and also here, there are a lot of Native Americans who have, you know, who are disadvantaged by major, you know, reasons and elements around them, like education or opportunities. So we just have to be like, you know, aware of their situation too, Maura, if you're still here. So we advocate some sort of awareness, some sort of, at the least, you know, being aware of other people like us who are not privileged to, you know, step into a university and have, you know, make an argument or learn to, you know, speak in an argumentative way or whatever, you know, like there are a lot of us that are out there that are under that situation, and a lot of them face deforestation where they live. And so it's a huge concern. So it's not about what we're talking about is not like uh I it is about identity, but it's also like because it's about identity, it extends beyond the nation that we're from. It extends to the fact that, you know, who we are also extends to people in South America, in North America, and Central America. So we have to speak, you know, about a little bit on of what they may be going through as well. And to answer the lady that is here, I'm so sorry, I don't know your name. Um, to answer your question, I think I think it's so hard because there's so much to unpack. I mean, we just covered a lot of it, you know, like some of us are in a tribe, some of us are not in a tribe. Some of us have stepped into universities, some of us have not stepped into universities. Some of us identify as brown, some of us don't identify as brown. They identify as indigenous. Some of us agree that indigenous is not probably the right word to call ourselves, while others say, yeah, yeah, it is. That's like the one label that should cover all of us. So it's a lot of disagreement on like who we are, what we are, and where we're gonna be, and where we came, even where we came from. Like somebody was just saying, I forgot your name too, was just saying this erasure of knowledge. Like if we had cohesive historical events from where we were to where we are now, we probably wouldn't be having this discussion. But unfortunately, we forgot, or you know, it was destroyed. Our knowledge on how to construct, you know, buildings, how to construct aqueducts, how to construct agriculture, how to have a civilization, how to run a government. Because the Inca had governments, the Maya had governments, they had citadels. Like you need a bunch of math and architecture to do like pyramids like the ones in Chichen Itza. Like those aren't just like built out of nowhere. You need a lot of math, but where did all that go? We don't know. It was either we erased it or it got erased, or maybe only the elite people knew how to do it and they didn't expand the knowledge to everybody. So then when the elite got erased, all the knowledge was erased with them. We don't know, and it's so huge, such a huge disparage of differences that we have, that it's just really hard to come together and agree. And then like Latinos, I think Latino is just like another word for brown, and they just don't want to use the word brown, and they say Latino. And I think what we mean by Chicano, Latino, Native American, and all these other titles that we have is simply just that we're brown Americans, and a lot of people don't agree with that. So that's what's probably keeping us sort of from coming together. This, you know, a lot of people don't do a lot of the ritual tribal stuff, you know. A lot of us don't dance with hula hoops and
Hmm.
all of that, but nevertheless we're still pretty native, you know, and so all those differences keeps us from coming together and really agreeing on who we are and where we're gonna go. I don't know, does that help? Does that answer the question?
Who's
I think
question?
the Chicanos that I've met see themselves as native, but I've only met a select few of Chicanos. So you're on the West Coast, so you've probably met more than I have. But for me, I always thought that Chicano and Native was kind of went hand in hand. Maybe I'm wrong. If someone wants to correct me, please go ahead.
Yeah, the Chicanos are definitely have an image of themselves that is not Anglo and does not want to be Anglo and does not want to assimilate. It's a very rebellious subculture that is native at its root. And there's a lot of people that say, oh, well, that's a political identity. Yes, it is a political identity. Just the way some natives want to keep their name as it's written in treaties. It's a political name and it holds a certain power. So Chicanos are no different. Just because they're called Chicano to hold a certain political, you know, identification doesn't mean that they're not indigenous. I mean, the same way a lot of the indigenous people, like, we can have layers to our identity, you know? Like, I was born in the US, so I am Mexican American. That's the label right there. And there's some of these labels we didn't impose on ourselves. We learn that that's how we're racialized by our environment. Like, for example, I was taught about Chicanismo from my dad at a very early age, at 9 years old, seeing how our people were lynched in books. You don't forget that. And that is why. Why did that happen to us? Because we were indigenous people. So it's not only political, it's also our experience as how we were seen here.
I agree.
Thanks for that. Quali, were you going to say something?
Oh, I just said I agreed with her.
Yeah.
On that
Well,
point.
I think, what Moore said, I have kind of like also taken to heart, with respect of, indigenous and communities and whatnot. But I don't know, like, and I think I talked to this with Juan as well. It's just like, you can be indigenous from anywhere, right? Like anyone can be indigenous from a certain area. So is there another word that should I don't know, that those that are native, reconnecting detribalized natives in the US should go under, or should it just be native? Right? I don't know. People are free to, disagree with me or whatnot, but I think that's just something that I've taken into consideration the past few months. Because it is true that anyone can be indigenous from anywhere. So
I think it's just political at that point.
Yeah.
And it's always going to be political.
I mean, I think anyone could be native from anywhere too.
That's true. Yeah.
It's just, I think it's just a semantics game. Like, anyone can identify with, like what Seatley said, with different identities. It's not about picking one. It's that a lot of people try to butt heads because like they want one or something, but we have to kind of stop trying to enforce one, I think, and just unite under like a political identity to assert our political stance, and stop butting heads so much over semantics. I mean, you can be, for example, I was raised Chicana, Mexican American. I'm technically Latina. I'm technically Hispanic, but I identify as Native American or Indigenous. But if I want to reconnect to a tribe, then I'll have my tribal identities as well. So it's not like I'm gonna choose one and then erase all the rest. If you can do whatever you want.
Can I add something? Sorry, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you.
Sorry, go ahead.
I think it's very nice what you guys are talking about, and I think I mentioned this like a while ago, but we also like don't forget like a lot of like countries like in Peru, for example, which is mostly also Ecuador, Bolivia, and Peru, and maybe even Mexico, Honduras. Like the reason why we have a lot of differences is also geographical. Like if you look at the geography of Peru, it's freaking like mountains upon mountains. So like you have one set of people construct like customs and habits like in one valley, and like in the different like just you hop the mountain and you go to another valley, and they have a whole set of different customs and habits there, and because it takes forever to go from one place to another, we think that in some sort of intrinsic difference.
I think we lost more. That was unfortunate. He was right in the middle of saying something. So I think he'll be back. I hope. I think someone said when they see Latin. That Latin is actually kind of new to me because I thought the whole like weird colonial concept was now Latinx, right? So now I see the Latin. All right. Oh,
Yeah.
Moore's back. Sorry, Maury. I think you got cut off. So go ahead and continue.
Sorry, I don't know what happened, but I did just want to finish the idea. I don't know how far I got into it without getting cut off, but I'm just saying, like, there's a lot of difference because of the geography itself, and because there's no infrastructure to connect us faster, we create differences. Like I was just saying, like in Peru, I can only speak on behalf of Peru because that's what I know, but like a lot of like groups of people create like habits and customs and traditions in one like particular valley, and then you go to like a valley that's not even that far, and they have a whole different set of customs and beliefs and habits, and it's only because like it's so hard to get around that mountain, so they start thinking that inherently or intrinsically the difference is among them, but it's not even like it's an inherent difference or something like that. It's just like connectivity is so hard to get, and like this fluidity of connecting with easiness and with fastness, that we start like being in one place more than another, and we start like practicing this, and we start differentiating ourselves from other people who are just like us, but they just decided to do things a little bit different. But like we have to also take into account the geography of it, like of these countries like Peru, Bolivia, Ecuador, and the reason why there's so much difference. It may not necessarily be that we're inherently different and that we're like different ethnicities. We're like the same. We just have different customs because we live in like different parts of the same of different valleys, and it's so hard to move around. Like it takes freaking 24 hours to go from Lima to Cusco. 24 hours in such a small country. Like if you hop on a plane, you'll be there in 30 minutes. But because it's so like mountainous and the roads suck and the infrastructure is just not there yet, it takes a freaking whole day. Who wants to travel? Like nobody's gonna hop in the car like on a daily basis and go to Cusco and come back. Like that's a whole trip that you have to like plan for and makes time for, and so it becomes like harder and harder. And then this, like I think that what ends up happening is that we start thinking that we're inherently different, or like we're ethnically different, when we're like the same people. We're just doing things different because it's so hard to get around with each other, to connect with each other. You know what I mean? And the
Yeah.
same thing is in the jungle, like Honduras and Guatemala jungle is the same thing. Like, do they have roads to connect from one side of this tiny Honduras location to the other side? They don't have roads. Like you have to walk there, and it's a jungle. So it's
Motorcycle.
really hard to get around and have this sort of conversation. And then now you start thinking that like intrinsically you're different than this other set of people that live like 20 miles away. Like, no, we're just the same. It's just a matter of infrastructure and our accessibility to connect with each other. It can arguably be reduced to that if we're really trying to push sort of like unity. Like, I don't know. What do you guys think?
You wanted to go first? I think, Quali, were you going to say something?
Oh no, I just kind of forgot what the question was or what it was about.
Why is it so? What's preventing us, or why is it so hard to connect? I think was basically the essence of the question. Like, right, like.
Yeah.
what's stopping the unity, or like what's preventing, or
Okay.
what's slowing down the unity? Like what are the causes of that? So that's why I was saying, like, there's so much difference, and a lot of the difference is because we start thinking it's inherent difference when it's not inherent difference. It's just circumstantial according to the circumstances that you're in, according to the crappy government that you have that was not willing to invest on infrastructure to get, like, look at the United States. The first 13 colonies of the United States was built on flat land. From all of the 13 colonies, most of that is flat. Like, it's not like mountainous like Peru and Bolivia and Ecuador. And what did that let them do? Create railroads. So back in like the 1800s, they were already moving faster than what we were moving in these very mountainous countries. They had a bunch of railroads in the 18 and 1900s, and that's how they were able to connect and create dialogue and create ideas and see themselves as one single type of people. If they were in a mountainous community, I bet you that like every valley would be different. It would have been a lot harder to create this fluidity of conversation and exchange of ideas and goods and and what do you call that when you trade, and the trading process would have been a lot harder if they would have colonized a region like Peru, which is extremely mountainous, and some of the mountains are like just plain out rocks. They're not even like the regular mountains that you're thinking about. They're like stone rocks. Like, you have to, like, they're boulders. They're humongous boulders. Like, what the hell do you do at that point? Like, you need some sort of like bombing system to like flatten out these mountains to like create railroads. It's really hard. I don't know if you guys know anything about Peru geography, but Peruvian geography is like, it's crazy. It's like
I've never been to.
three different worlds in one single country. You have the coast, the jungle, and the Andes. And it's really hard to move around the country just because of the geography itself.
Well, yeah, I can agree with more on that. That definitely in Peru, the geography is extremely complicated.
Do you think that? Sorry.
Oh no, you can go. We're gonna ask. Juan?
Do you just think it's just because the terrain's just complicated? Because Andean people are just complicated. Like, our ancestors just wanted to be so complicated so that people didn't come in.
Yeah, well, I mean,
it's just a joke.
No, I got it. I think I understand where more is coming from, but just to like really look past like the differences between like where we're at, like if we're looking outside the US, right, then definitely like nationalities like very much set us apart, right? Because like someone was saying in here, many people in the Americas look at themselves as like what, a Peruvian first, right? Or a Mexican first. And so the national identity seems to be very that's what I'm looking for, I guess, prioritized over like your roots, right? And I guess that, I don't know, in the education system and in the media there or whatever, that they push that hardcore, it seems. So I think that makes it very hard for us to be able to come together from one nation to another. But we do live in a very connected world, right? Like everything is like online. So I think it is easier for us now because, we have many people, I look on the top countries that like where people view my channel, right? A lot of people from Mexico look at it. There's people from Bolivia that look at it, in Peru, right? So obviously we are reaching out to people from around the Americas. But that being said, like, again, like the geography and the nations that we come from, it can be a little bit complicated, especially connecting what we're saying to the rest of the world in South America, Central America, and Mexico. Even with the progress that we've made, it's hard.
Yeah.
But we are making progress. That's the thing. Sorry.
I believe it's just, I just think that people need to be more open to understanding other people's history and their struggles and how they identify. And how they can actually do the hard work and help and be of service.
Yeah, definitely be of service. Like,
Yeah.
I agree with you, Juan.
Good point.
Yeah. So, we went to 3 hours and somehow I'm still awake, and
It was a
What
good
time
talk.
is it in Illinois?
it's like 11:50. So it's actually not extremely late. It's almost midnight. To be honest, I could keep talking.
Wow.
But
It's only going to be 10 here in Pacific time, so
yeah,
not too late.
you guys aren't too late over there.
Hey, what county are you in? I just like broadly speaking. You're in California, right?
Who, me? Yeah.
Yeah, was that you?
Yes.
What county are you in?
San Diego.
Oh, nice. I love San Diego.
Yeah. It's nice out here. Well, thanks for inviting me. Definitely, we gotta come on more. I gotta get together more often with you guys on Indigenous podcast. It was fun.
Yeah. Thank you for coming on.
people.
It was good to see you, Quali.
Good listening to y'all, what you guys had to say. And but yeah, we need to definitely talk more as a community about these issues and plan it out, you know. So have a good night, everybody. I'm gonna.
Bye, take care.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
See you, Quali. Thank you for coming on. I should have shown Quali the funny video before she left, but that's okay. So that being said, did anyone have any questions for the panel at all? I think we'll probably wrap this up and maybe have a little after party, a small one, because we always do, right? It's still
Yeah,
original.
I really enjoy the after parties.
Yeah, after parties are always fun, because then I can be more of myself. Just kidding.
When you're not being recorded. Yeah.
Right? You know how wild I get in the after. I'm kidding.
Yeah, you get really wild.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Just get out the drinks.
We can't have that on record.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. Kat, thanks a lot. Yeah, I really appreciate all. Did anyone have any questions from the chat? Again, thanks to everyone that's contributed, left comments and whatnot. It's always appreciated. And thank you for still watching my content. Still here. But yeah, please put in any questions you have. If you don't have anything, then we're going to wrap this up, have our little after party, and be done. Juan or Cindy, did you guys have anything wanted to bring up?
No, I don't.
No, I think we discussed everything. We talked about a lot of topics, and hopefully we'll be back to talk more. So I think I spoke about everything that I wanted to. Thank you.
Thank you. Coming on, yeah, but you're welcome. Yeah, Karina, you had a question, so please drop the question in the chat. Happy to answer it. I thought we said in the after party, Karina. Maybe one day, Karina. But it's almost midnight, so it'll be another time. How many indigenous people from Latin America live in the USA? Well, they said that, well, in a video that I made, I think the indigenous population went from, what was it, 10 to almost 20 million. But I also have thought a lot about that, and you have to take into the perspective of how many of those could like be pretendians, right? Like we're talking about like people with the great Cherokee princess, grandmas, great grandmas, or whatever. Could be a lot of them. But that being said, a lot of those people that did like see themselves as indigenous in the last census, U.S. census, were like those that saw themselves as Latino at one point. So yeah, I think I put the article in that video, or if not, I will. So that was good. I think that might answer your question. You have a few million questions? Well, Thomas will probably only be able to answer one. All right, so Owen, link you shared looks like it promotes Wabo ideas. Wait, what link? What? Luis, what's your question? Luis, what's your question? So we can end this. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Okay. Well, hope you guys all had a good night. I'm gonna get going. Thank you all for leaving the comments, but I'm gonna end this broadcast now. So you all have a good night or a good morning or a good afternoon as always.